Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
I just wanted to say something. K, the brain is not MK, it's PA. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
Good morning, honorable members. I wish to welcome all members who have logged into this virtual mini-plenary session. There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. Thank you, honorable members. Before we proceed, I would like to remind you that the virtual mini-plenary is deemed to be in the precincts of Parliament and thus constitute a meeting of the National Assembly for debating purposes only. In addition to the rules of virtual sittings, the rules of the National Assembly, including the rules of debate, will apply. Members enjoy the same powers and privileges that apply in a sitting of the National Assembly. Members should equally note and be aware that anything that is said in the virtual platform is deemed to have been said to the House and may be ruled upon. All members who have logged in shall be considered to be present and are requested to mute their microphones and only unmute when they are recognized to speak. The microphones are very sensitive and will pick up noise which may disturb the attention of other members. And when recognized to speak, please unmute your microphone and where connectivity permits, connect your video. Members may make use of the icons on the bar at the bottom of their screens, which has an option that allows a member to put up his or her hand to raise points of order. The Secretariat will assist me in this regard. And when using the virtual system, members are urged to refrain or desist from unnecessary points of order or interjections. Lastly, I wish to remind you that we are meeting in a mini-plenary session and therefore any decisions that will be taken in a full plenary session of the National Assembly. The first item on the order paper is a subject for discussion in the name of the Honorable Sekoati on the developmental role of the financial sector in supporting industrialisation and structural transformation. The Honorable Sekoati.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning to members of this August House. And I would like to also take this opportunity, Chair, to thank you for having given me this opportunity to partake in this all-important debate on developmental role of the financial sector in supporting industrialization and structural transformation. Honourable Speaker, having chairperson of the session, we bring this debate to this House after the Statistician General informed the nation that our unemployment statistics have increased by 0.6 percentage points to 33.50% of the official definition and 42.60 of the expanded definition. That tells us that we are actually at a critical stage in terms of the unemployment, which continue to feed on the inequalities in this country, but also on the poverty lines in this country.
Sorry, we've got members in the...
Honorable Sekoati, our apologies for that. The Honorable Masango, will you please mute your microphone? Honorable Sekoati, you may continue now.
Since our democratic breakthrough, we have struggled with structural unemployment and stagnant economic growth from period of 2010 to 23 economic growth has averaged 1.2%. This can mainly be attributed to the lack of structural transformation of the economy and the process of the industrialization that our country undertook post-1994.
I'm going to be doing quite an extensive talk.
Honorable
It'll take us some
Masango,
time to get through, so
Honorable
do know that it's
Masango,
a
will you
lot of
please
information.
mute your
It's
microphone?
just about putting on a computer and clicking back.
May I just ask the table staff to communicate with the member and in the meantime remove her from the platform. She can rejoin without the microphone. Honorable Sekoati, please continue.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Perhaps I should go back because really the member was interjecting. Since our democratic breakthrough, we have struggled with structural unemployment and stagnant economic growth from the period of 2010 to 2023. Economic growth has also averaged 1.2%. This can mainly be attributed to the lack of structural transformation of the economy and the process of deindustrialization that our country undertook post-1994. The productive sectors of our economy, such as manufacturing contribution to GDP, declined from 20% in 1994 to the current figure of about 12% in the same breath. We have also witnessed the financialization of the South African economy. And according to Gerald Epstein's classical definition, financialization entails, I quote, the increasing role of financial motives, financial markets, financial actors, and financial institutions in operation of the domestic and international economies, close quote. Extensive financialization occurred as an integral part of neoliberal globalization. It is partially reflected in the sharp increase in the share of financial services in the GDP's many countries. For example, it increased from, in South Africa, it increased from 6% of South Africa's GDP in 1994 to nearly 25% today. It has also entailed the emergence of extensive trading and speculation in financial products, securities, and derivatives, with this kind of activity becoming the core business of much of the sector. It has concepts like shareholder value coming to trump to all the considerations in shaping investment. Innovation, product development, health and safety, amongst other decisions by capital in all sectors. And it has also seen increasing demands and assertions that profit-seeking opportunities are created in an ever-increasing range of programs for financial institutions to participate in. Honorable Chairperson, in South Africa and other developing countries, financialization has seen a fundamental shift by financial institutions away from the provision of risk capital to support industrial activity or small business development. In other parts of the world, in the growth of China, for instance, that development involved what some analysts have always called financial suppression. Its banks were never allowed to become the speculators and traders in paper. That is, its Western counterparts had become instead. Instead, the Chinese Development Bank became the apex of the number of institutions focusing on providing resources to support enterprise in the productive sectors. So it has therefore become an entrepreneurial state in the sense that it continues to ensure that there is capital outlay for development sectors in their country and not shy away from that. Similarly, we have to make use of state banks to promote economic development, and therefore, Post Bank should be registered as a bank as a matter of agency. Our DFIs are further important development institutions that should be fully capitalized and oriented towards supporting diversified industrial sectors that will drive growth. Our Chair and honorable members would be doing an injustice to this debate if we don't demonstrate the extent to which the financial sectors has determined our attempts at driving transformation and economic growth. It is firstly imperative to highlight that the dominance of the sector is reinforced by increasing financialization of other sectors of the economy, like mining and retail. The penetration of financialization into other sectors includes the major shift in corporate practice to enhance shareholder value above all else, incentivizing CEOs and CFOs with grotesque rewards, not for the productive outcome of productive investments in the mines or factories, but for short-term manipulative increases in share value for those that are meant to be shareholders. The strategic interests and economic perspective of monopoly finance capital also dominate much of the media today. The lack of reciprocation by the sector in rescuing small business illustrated in 2020-2021 when government attempted to assist businesses in distress and as a consequence of the COVID lockdown recession. In response to the lockdown recession, the South African Reserve Bank has already injected money into the financial sector through the purchase of bonds on the secondary market. That is, the South African Reserve Bank further expanded the liquidity of the private banks by purchasing the government bonds that they held. At the same time, government made available a potential 200 billion to the same banks in terms of COVID-19 loan guarantee scheme to assist businesses in distress. The National Guarantee Scheme was designed in such a way that 94% of the risk was to be absorbed by the National Treasury and the South African Reserve Bank.
Honourable Member, time has now expired. Thank you very much. The next speaker is the Honourable D.D. van Rooyen. Is the Honourable van Rooyen on the platform? And the support staff check if the Honourable van Rooyen is on the platform or not, so that we can proceed. He's not on the platform. We'll proceed then to the Honourable Bateman.
Yes, Honourable Chair, I'm standing in for Honourable van Rooyen. It's Honourable Luchingela.
Okay, please proceed, Honourable Member.
Thank you, Chair. Umkhonto weSizwe, on behalf of millions of South Africans who voted for it, welcome the opportunity to take part in this debate. To be specific, we are referring to both rigged and not rigged votes. There is a global consensus that financial investment in industrial development is crucial for driving economic growth and employment creation. As MKP, we agree that the financial sector has a significant role to play in supporting and promoting industrialization of South African economy by providing capital investment, particularly to segments of the population that have historically been excluded. In South Africa, this is further necessitated by the fact that economic sectors that had flourished as a result of state supporting during apartheid continues to dominate the economy. So this dominance is supported by neoliberal post-apartheid economic policy choices of trade liberalization together with tight macroeconomic policy and inflation targeting championed by pro-neoliberal factions within the ANC. The establishment of the so-called GNU is a major achievement for this faction and its neoliberal allies because they successfully managed to sideline their long-time struggle allies, COSATU and the SACP, and replace them with the DA and the Freedom Front. So, Chairperson, despite the creation of the development finance institutions, the Industrial Development Corporation, IDC, Development Bank of South Africa, and the National Empowerment Fund, post-apartheid era has seen our country deindustrializing at a rapid pace, leading to a massive reduction of industrialization as a share of the GDP. Now, this dominance of the financial markets by an unpatriotic private and white-owned financial institution highlights the importance of MKP call for nationalization of the Reserve Bank and all major financial institutions. This will enable government to make development finance available for industrialization and structural transformation. So Umkhonto weSizwe Party will also call for a comprehensive and long-term support to emerging Black-owned financial institutions like Ithala Bank. Punitive and destructive measures disguised as legislation, enforcement and compliance exercise against these institutions must be stopped at all costs. The hastily manner of winding up and liquidating instead of supporting or correcting performance gap must not be condoned. Hence, MKP is calling on the Prudential Authority to immediately withdraw the Repayment Administrator Service and allow for more considerate and constructive dialogue process between the National Treasury and the KZN government. So Ithala is a key actor in KZN economic landscape, and it must be supported by government and not to be completely handed over to a greedy private hands. So for South Africa, Comrade Chair, to realize the value of its DFIs, it's equally important to note that manufacturing with its growth-enhancing properties is crucial for driving the growth of industrialization. So that is why, under its government, MKP will invest heavily in manufacturing sector by providing capital for investment, particularly to segments of the population that have been historically excluded. So, Chairperson, solving the problems of poverty and inequality in South Africa is closely related with providing finance in the economy for those who had been previously excluded. Unfortunately, with the current government model of the GNU, which is obsessed with privatization, which is no longer functioning as an agent of its citizens, but rather as an agent of the market systems, Umkhonto weSizwe Party has no hope that the country will realize any major economic structural reforms under this administration. So hence our call on all patriotic South Africans and members of political parties without fear or favor to continue condemning the so-called government of national unity as an impediment to our economic freedom. We urge all eligible voters to use their voting power to remove the so-called government of national unity representatives. And lastly, Chair, let's do it now during municipal by-elections and SRC elections in all tertiary institutions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Members, this is the first of a series of mini-plenaries that we will be having. And I just want to inform the new members in the chamber or on the platform and those who are participating for the first time is that political party insignia or regalia are not allowed on the background. Parliament has distributed a number of virtual backgrounds that can be utilized, and we should refrain from displaying party political regalia. The next speaker is the Honourable Bateman.
Thank you, House Chairperson. Honourable members and Honourable Ministers and Deputy Ministers who may be present. Firstly, let us define what this topic is about. Industrialisation is the development of industries. What do we mean by industries? Industries manufacture and sell goods at scale in a globally competitive landscape, typically. Structural transformation describes the effect on the economy of a nation or a region as manufacturing activity increases. In other words, industrialization results in structural transformation. The question before us this morning is what role the financial sector plays or should play in supporting industrialization and structural transformation. The financial sector provides a range of important products and services to the economy, including deposits, loans, transactional banking, foreign exchange, insurance, investments, retirement products, and so on. Today, I'd like to focus on one area in particular, namely the provision of capital. It takes capital to establish new manufacturing industries. It takes capital to expand existing manufacturing industries. Without capital, there will be no industrialization. Without capital, there will be no structural transformation. Capital is typically provided by the financial sector in the form of loans or direct equity investments. We know how banks receive deposits and extend loans. In the case of direct equity investments, the financial sector plays the role of an enabler. It brings together investors and companies that require investment. It does this by creating a marketplace for investments such as the JSE, or by facilitating private equity transactions. And these are critical roles that the financial sector performs for industrialization to occur. Could our financial sector be improved? Yes, of course it could, for example, through resolving the reputational damage of grey listing by the Financial Action Task Force. Yet in general, South Africa has a highly developed financial sector, and shareholders and customers exert pressure on financial sector players to expand their businesses and remain competitive in their offerings. So in theory, if there's competitive lending business to be done, there will be banks ready to lend. And if there are competitive investments to be made, there ought to be investors ready to invest. The financial sector is ready and waiting for investable opportunities. So what is our problem? Why is manufacturing performing so poorly in South Africa? The key is found in the simple word, competitive. Banks and investors make rational decisions. Like any rational persons, they avoid taking unnecessary risks with their capital. If a bank can lend all its surplus cash to the government and make a margin, why would it risk its capital on a manufacturing venture, especially given its responsibility towards its depositors? Unless, of course, it's VBS. If an investor has to take excessive risk to invest in South Africa, that investor would rather hold onto its cash or invest its capital somewhere else. This leads us on naturally to two further questions. Firstly, in relation to loans, and it's critical that we ask the right questions. In relation to loans, how can we boost savings and reduce government debt so government does not crowd out private sector borrowing for manufacturing expansion? And secondly, in relation to direct equity investment, our key question is, how do we make South Africa a highly competitive destination for direct investments into manufacturing? It's critical that we ask the right questions. But after asking the right questions, as government, whether we're in the legislature or in the executive, we need to listen. On the question of global competitiveness, we need to hear the voices that have been sidelined, the voices of real entrepreneurs, business owners, and business executives who create and sustain successful manufacturing industries, and those who have not succeeded. What are the actions and the policies of government that have been hurting our manufacturing industries? What will it take to transform South Africa into a competitive manufacturing investment destination? If we listen carefully, we shall start to find the answers. And then we can potentially transform our economy from being a global leader in unemployment to being a global leader in manufacturing, in GDP growth, and in employment. We can reverse the trend of rising unemployment, poverty, and inequality, but we need to be open to the fact that this may require fresh thinking. The single most important question we need to be asking is, how can we compete in the global market for direct manufacturing investment? In responding to this question, I'd like to make 4 observations. Firstly, the GNU is already beginning to lower the political risk associated with investing in South Africa, with a strong reaffirmation of the Constitution, the rule of law, and property rights. This is lifting business confidence. This is significant, and it needs to be nurtured and protected. Secondly, Operation Vulindlela is setting out to clear the roadblocks to investment like water and electricity supply, freight rail and ports, and visas for scarce skills. For this to succeed, it must be given measurable targets and timeframes. It will be tremendous if we can get this right. Thirdly, addressing violent crime is critical to attract and retain the necessary engineering skills, which are in demand internationally. And fourthly, we need to make it easy to do business in South Africa by cutting red tape and alleviating the burden of regulatory compliance. We need to reform aspects of our labor regime. We need to replace BEE and find new ways of addressing past injustices and creating equal opportunities for all. Does the financial sector have a developmental role to play in supporting industrialization and structural transformation? Yes, absolutely. Amongst other things, it acts as a facilitator of investment through loans and equity investment. However, the more important question is how we improve our global competitiveness in order to attract investment into our manufacturing sector. The GNU welcomes the GNU's commitment, the DA welcomes the GNU's commitment to prioritizing economic growth and job creation. Now we wait to see how good intentions will be translated into tangible initiatives. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Mahotwe.
Thank you very much. We've lost count of how many times in the past 10 years we've debated the developmental role of the financial sector in supporting industrialization and structural transformation in this very same house. Some members of parliament may remember this, although many might be new. But in the 5th Parliament, Chair, it was the EFF that pushed for joint public hearings on financial sector transformation way back in 2017. Chair, we raised this issue for 2 reasons. First, the financial sector has poor record of transformation because more than 20 years after the beginning of the democratic dispensation, economic power through the financial sector remains in the hands of a white minority, particularly men. The second reason, Chair, was that the government had failed in 20 years to transform the financial sector so that it plays a developmental role in supporting reindustrialization. I want to encourage members, Chair, through you, particularly those who sit in the Standing Committee of Finance, to go and read the report that was finalized on the 6th of September and tabled in the House on the 28th of November 2017. One particular recommendation that was made out of that report, Chair, which is relevant to today's discussion, was the need to deal with market concentration, monopolization, and ownership in the financial sector that undermines any efforts to support industrialization and structural transformation. That was nearly 7 years ago, and the former liberation movement has done nothing but protect the status quo of a white-owned economy that serves the minority. It's not like that was the last time we debated this matter, Chair. We debated a similar matter once again in June 2022, when the National Assembly considered the financial sector and deposit insurance levies bill. Today, we have 28 registered banks in South Africa, 3 mutual banks, and 30 cooperative sector entities. But the 5 largest banks, which is Standard Bank, Absa, Nedbank, Capitec, and FNB, collectively hold 90% of the total banking asset. The total banking asset grew to 7.7 trillion rands, of which very little, if anything, belongs to Black people. Chair, you'll find the same situation in the life insurers and non-life insurers owned and controlled by monopolies. Chair, we are not debating this today because we don't know what needs to be done. We know exactly what needs to be done. The financial sector is responsible for every part of our lives. It controls what we eat. It controls where we sleep. It controls where we work. It controls how we get to work, whether we have life, funeral, or assets insurance, whether we produce as a country, and everything else that we can think of. The current model of the financial sector that is in the hands of a few people who control the fate of this country is never going to work. We need to take lessons from China. China is the only country in the history of development that has uplifted more than 700 million people out of poverty since the late 1970s. The largest economy in terms of GDP, in terms of purchasing power parity. Chair, the state must be at the forefront of industrialization the same way the IDC was back in the 1950s. We need state-owned banks, not one, but many. We need state-specialized banks. We need state insurance companies that support and incentivize industrialization. The state must have its own capacity to support and lead industrialization without being worried about the so-called market sentiment, but should incorporate policy instruments that will resolve poverty, high levels of unemployment, and inequality. Instead, House Chair, we'll continue to be told about private banks' profits that do not translate into jobs if we don't change the status quo. Chair, you'll note that ABSA recorded 20.9 billion earnings in 2023, and that money does not help us to reduce the inequality. Nedbank, the same thing, 15.7 billion earnings, while workers are losing homes and cars. FNB, 31.4 billion, while young people are sitting at home with diplomas and degrees because there are no jobs in this country. Chair, if we do not create state capacity, a state-led financial sector, and state-controlled industrialization financed by the state, we'll be back here in 7 years' time to debate yet another subject sponsored by the same party, except that that party will not be in power. It will be completely out of power. We know what needs to be done, Chair, and it is not debate here in this House. The fact that the formal liberation movement took a resolution to establish a state-owned bank back in 2017 and reaffirmed this position again as a resolution in 2022, yet we do not have a state-owned bank now in 2024, goes to show just how serious the neo-colonial administrators in office without power are about protecting the status quo. Let's change the living conditions of our people, Chair. This country is marked with high unemployment rate, is marked with high levels of inequality, high levels of poverty, but the financial sector does not contribute anything except that they are profiting out of the lives of our people. If we do not change the status quo, Chair, today, we've got no one to blame but ourselves. But we will not sit back as the EFF. We'll continue to fight and to conscientize our people that this government of Dinonyan is not here to change their living conditions, but really to safeguard the interest of white monopoly capital. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Radebe.
Thank you so much, Honourable Chairperson. Honourable Chairperson, the financial sector is crucial in supporting industrialization and structural transformation in South Africa by providing capital supporting infrastructure development, managing risks, fostering entrepreneurship, ensuring economic stability, and facilitating access to global markets. The government can ensure that our country is driven towards sustainable economic growth and industrial diversification. The IFP has historically emphasized various aspects related to economic development, industrialization, and the role of the financial sector. Our perspectives on these issues can be understood through our focus on regional development, empowerment, and socio-economic equality. There is no urban future that excludes rural communities. Therefore, the IFP has consistently advocated for more equitable regional development, particularly in underdeveloped areas, to reduce regional disparities and foster economic growth outside major urban centers. We have always made it known that our support lies with policies that direct investment towards economically disadvantaged regions through the establishment of institutions that support regional industrial hubs and infrastructure projects in rural areas, promoting community-based financial institutions that provide tailored financial services to underdeveloped areas aligned with our emphasis on empowering local communities. We continuously stress the importance of supporting small, medium enterprises as a means to foster economic inclusion and create job opportunities. We advocate for policies that enhance access to finance to small and medium-sized businesses. The IFP has been a forerunner in championing economic policies that promote self-reliance and reduce dependency on foreign aid and investment. We advocate for strategies that ensure local industries and business thrive independently. Supporting local industries through targeted financial support and incentives has always been one of our top priorities. Therefore, Honorable Chairperson, the IFP would always lend its support to efforts seeking to enhance financial inclusions, ensuring that marginalized communities and small businesses have access to banking services, loans, and investment opportunities. Financial institutions should be encouraged to engage in social impact investment that addresses inequality and supports community development projects. Our view on the financial sector's role in industrialization and structural transformation emphasizes regional development. SME support economic reliance, addressing inequality and infrastructure development. Aligning these views with the financial sector's functions includes promoting local investment, enhancing financial access for SME, supporting self-reliance, local industries, and funding infrastructure projects to drive inclusive economic growth. Honorable Chairperson, there is no secure future for one segment of society while another remains disempowered. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Do we have a speaker from the Patriotic Alliance? There's no speaker from the Patriotic Alliance. I then recognize the Honourable Dr. Boshoff.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. Structural transformation is when the socio-economic structure of society is changed beyond recognition. This should lead to a sustained rise in productivity and living standards. Traditionally, it is believed to move from agrarian to industrial to service domination. Today, we debate how the financial sector can or should contribute. We should keep in mind that the economy is about people, not numbers. The numbers are only there to describe what happens in the lives of people. However, the financial sector works with the money of so many people that it becomes easy to see only the numbers and not the people. The mathematics used to calculate how much I, as a 54-year-old male, should pay to insure my 2019 Renault Duster, which is mainly driven by myself and overnights in a safe part of the country, but not behind a closed gate or a lock-up garage, is indeed impressive. It all works with categories, and if I happen to be an exception, it does not matter very much. But when the bank uses a similar model to decide whether it should lend a specific person money to pursue a great business idea, it becomes less useful. The model can take into consideration the turnover in this person's account, his or her credit record, and the age profile's likeliness to pay. But it cannot evaluate the business idea or the unquantifiable aspects of the person's personality. Many businesses which substantially contribute to the current level of industrialization had previously been established because of a bank manager who did not only look at the figure, but also at the person. Using only mathematic models to predict likeliness of a successful loan means that new entrants to the economy find it increasingly difficult to be funded. Funding of these ideas mainly move to the margins of the financial sector. While the banks provide consumer credit to those with good salaries and loans to already successful businesses, and while insurance companies and pension funds invest in listed companies, it is family members or stokvels or other private lenders who finance emerging great ideas. So we have these two economies: an established economy where the financial sector performs well, and an emerging economy where it does not. The established one provides jobs for less than half of the population. Imagine a state agency which established businesses with the aim to transfer it to employees who demonstrate their ability and the dedication to run it, and then assist it to keep it running. Or build industrial parks where emerging entrepreneurs can establish themselves with appropriate infrastructure and mentorship available. It existed in the so-called Homeland Development Corporations, which were abolished in 1994. It is nevertheless surprising how much capital local communities have if they can only mobilize and manage it well. It is a pity about VBS, previously a good example. But that is the purpose of a cooperative bank, which mobilizes local capital and lends locally. It funds local projects to create jobs. It puts the human in the center of the economy without disregarding mainstream wisdom. The most successful bank of this kind is in Orania. While still a credit league, it learned a lot from the experience of Stokvels. One bank famously asked, "How can we help?" As communities, we could rather ask, how can we help each other? I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Thring.
Thank you, Honourable House Chairperson. The ACDP acknowledges the important role the financial sector plays in supporting industrialisation and structural transformation in developing and emerging economies, including South Africa. A well-developed financial system facilitates the efficient allocation of capital to productive sectors, promoting the growth of small, medium, and micro enterprises, which are often the backbone of industrialisation. The ACDP believes that concessional financing, which is below market rate financing, can be effective in supporting industrialisation. But South Africa must demand more from your development finance institutions, your DFIs. These institutions must put an end to their economic apartheid practices, where higher interest rates are charged to African countries which pay between 5 to 16% on 10-year government bonds, compared to near zero or negative rates for the US and European governments, which have enjoyed concessional funding since COVID. The ACDP believes that South Africa's financial sector, while sophisticated and well-developed, has fallen short in supporting industrialization and structural transformation. In this regard, more must be done to unlock the power and potential of public-private partnerships. Furthermore, the ACDP believes that there is inadequate support for research and development and venture capital for high-risk, high-reward sectors, which in turn restricts the growth of new industries. South Africa, unfortunately, is in premature deindustrialization. A 2020 industrial development think tank noted that we have been falling down global GDP rankings over a long period of time. For decades, the annual growth rate of the manufacturing sector has slowed down dramatically, thereby affecting the absolute manufacturing value addition produced. The ACDP calls for value addition to be given priority in extracting and processing raw materials, designing products, producing components, integrating or assembling product systems, and adding services to products downstream in the value chain. The ACDP will continue to champion the cause for beneficiation as a low-hanging fruit for value addition and to raise the level of the standard of living of South Africans. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Webster.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, please proceed.
Thank you. The financial sector in South Africa has a significant role to play in the support of industrialization, particularly given the history that we have in South Africa, particularly given also the current challenges that we have. And this is a responsibility that while business is about making profit, the financial sector needs to embrace and understand. There are a number of issues that we need to look at, even broadly. When you look at development, you have to look at the issue of inequality and look at the fact that financial institutions in South Africa have got to be part of addressing the significant socio-economic inequalities that we have in this country. And that includes making sure that there's provision of equitable access to credit, particularly to marginalized communities, communities that have not before been included financially in this country. And it's important that while, as I've mentioned, we're aware that financial institutions in the private sector have profitability goals, they have got to align these with the development goals of this country to ensure that we reduce poverty, because actually in the main, ultimately, this then benefits the sector itself. Some of the issues that need to be addressed by the sector, first of all, are the issue of bridging for small and medium enterprises. We cannot talk about industrialization in an emerging economy like South Africa without speaking about SMMEs. And so the financial sector should ensure that there's an expansion of access to credit for SMEs, and SMEs in this country particularly struggle, particularly Black SMMEs, particularly struggle to get involved in sectors that are important for industrialization, such as manufacturing, such as agribusiness and logistics, because of the exclusion of SMMEs when it comes to credit and credit access. The second is in ensuring that as we talk about broad-based Black economic empowerment, and the economic empowerment that we've seen has not been broad-based. Even when you look at DFIs like the IDC, really we can quite honestly say that that has benefited for the most part the connected and those who have access, but it has not been broad in how it has addressed the issue of industrialization in this country, and we can quite fairly say to an extent that it's failed. And there are a number of reasons for that, part of which are the fact that even when you look at the leadership of the IDC at this point, when you look at the board of the IDC at this point, you have people who've been on that board for more than 10 years, and you therefore do not have fresh thinking, you therefore do not even have forward thinking in how we invest in industrialization in this country. I mentioned briefly the issue of financial inclusion. And we cannot talk about industrialization when we still have communities that are excluded, particularly in the rural areas. It's very clear that when you look at the mainstream economy right now, you have got to extend even geographically beyond the mainstream economy. And what that means is that you look at rural industrialization and rural development, and that means that you have to make sure that there's financial inclusion, that you actually have communities that are able to be included in the financial sectors, in the financial sector, that are able to transact in the financial sector, and so that you can facilitate the development of industries in rural areas and support the transformation of various sectors like agro-processing in those areas.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Your time is now expired. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next speaker is the Honourable Galeka Mazibuko. The Honourable Galeka Mazibuko. Will the table staff check if the Honourable Member is on the platform? While we wait for that member, we will proceed. And I will ask the speaker from the DA, the Honourable Bapti, who's delivering a maiden speech, to proceed.
Thank you, Honourable
Sorry,
Speaker.
Chair, it's Honourable Hlongo. Can I please stand in for Honourable Galeka?
Yes, is Honourable Mhlongo, is that the whip? Please proceed, Honourable Mhlongo. I'll come back to you, Honourable Bapti.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Let me begin with what we all know. South Africa holds some painful world records. According to the World Bank, South Africa is the most unequal society on earth. We have the highest levels of income inequality. Our wealth inequality is even greater. We have what must rank as the world's worst crisis levels of unemployment at an unsustainable level, now at 42.6% in the broader and more accurate definition. Youth unemployment at around an incredible 60.8%, regardless of gender, is even more catastrophic. Unemployment of women of all working ages with Black women the most affected, is 2.4% higher than that of men. Given that the racial and gender dimensions of unemployment continue to be rooted in the stubborn legacy of colonialism of a special type, it is pretty obvious that young Black women are the majority of youth unemployment. These are facts, but they are not just statistics. They testify to the daily reality of working class households and communities, to children going to bed hungry and losing their childhood, to unemployed youth with their dreams shattered, to women suffering the most awful gender-based violence, to LGBTQI+ people being abused, to retrenched workers on street corners. These are daily South African realities. In differing degrees, you will find them throughout the global South. But what makes South Africa a global outlier is the degree to which poverty and unemployment occur amid extreme inequality and significant wealth, because South Africa is a global outlier in other respects as well. The value of speculative capital on the Johannesburg Securities Exchange is around 3 times more than our GDP. The rand is amongst the most traded emerging market currencies. We are said to have amongst the most sophisticated financial sectors. Are these different sets of realities unconnected social calamity on the one hand and hyper-financialization on the other? Are inequality, poverty, unemployment, and endemic social violence, as we are told, merely a legacy hangover from decades of apartheid, worsened by state capture corruption? The terrible legacy of our colonial and apartheid past and epidemic corruption are major factors, but it is the hegemony of the financial oligarchy and its related neoliberal policies and its deep influence upon government and wider society that have become the major drivers of the deepening socio-economic crisis confronting majority of South Africans. It is perhaps imperative to recognize the historical evolution of the high levels of concentration of the South African economy and the financial sector, and it begins with the fact that apartheid had left the country with an economy characterized by excessive levels of concentration of ownership and control, as well as lack of participation by all South Africans. The apartheid regime actively promoted national champions in different sectors, developed industrial state-owned enterprise, monopolies, and agricultural cooperatives that were later privatized and condoned industries cartels in its efforts to promote self-sufficiency and the economic interests of a minority. This era also saw the emergence of a few conglomerates holding companies that held investments in businesses across much of the economy, resulting in an excessive concentration of wealth of the JSE. Whilst high or growing concentration does not equate to a lack of deterioration in competition, we must differentiate between efficient and inefficient periods of growing concentration. Efficient periods are generally associated with tougher price competition, intangible investment, and increasing productivity of leaders, which results in growing shares for efficient leading firms, but which occur of low levels of concentration. Inefficient concentration occurs where entrenched leaders are resulting in lower levels of competition and higher entry barriers, and where concentration is associated with lower investment, higher prices, and lower productivity growth. In the South African context, concentration is of particular concerns because it is generally not associated with efficient forms of growing concentration, but rather inefficient forms. This is because the economy inherited a concentrated market structure from the apartheid era, which entrenched leaders that remain dominant today. Inefficient concentration is associated with higher margins and is seen to impose a structural constraints on growth. Persistent concentration by historically dominant firms is also associated with lack of transformation of the economy, denying opportunities to those who were historically excluded to participate and grow their share of economic value. Honorable House Chairperson, the high values or the high levels of concentration in the financial sector are evident. The high levels of concentration in the financial sector are evidently showed by the Competition Commission and in its report that the bottom 50% firms, which are all SMMEs in the sector, receive a total share turnover of over 4.4% as opposed to the top 10% of firms receiving a total share turnover of 77.2%. The high levels of firm incomes inequality is consistent with a weaker SMME sector in South Africa relative to comparator countries such as the OECD set of countries. It also highlights the lack of meaningful participation and spread of ownership in the economy for the vast majority of South Africans, and the need to make this a focus to both competition law enforcement, but also general economic policy. The lack of participation and transformation of the economy also directly impacts on employment and household inequality, as SMEs do not contribute disproportionally to employment, which is one of the major factors driving households inequality. House Chairperson, at the core of our mission lies the urgent pursuit for transformation within the financial sector, an imperative rooted in redressing historical imbalances and promoting inclusivity for all South Africans throughout the post-apartheid era. Our democracy has made significant strides, but the pressing need for economic inclusion continues to demand attention. The financial services sector, in particular, continues to be heavily dominated by a minority.
Chair.
Yes, honorable member.
Can you also invoke that rule that a person must not read the speech? This is
No, honorable member, that's not the point of order. Please continue, honorable member who was on the platform. Well, the member was on the platform, please continue.
It is also instructive that the financial sector should be at the center of providing enterprise development of SMMEs to invest in science, innovation, and technology and support the productive capabilities of the state to enhance structural transformation. To this end, an effective instrument is required for socio-economic transformation to be able to fully respond to the realities of society on our ongoing journey of realizing transformation in the sector to change the general economic conditions. It is evident that the financial sector will not transform itself without an effective, compelling instrument. Government needs to aggressively show appetite for change. It cannot be business as usual. The financial sector has an important role to play in driving sustainable economic development, empowering historical disadvantaged individuals and communities, and fostering an inclusive and thriving economy. The assets held by the sector can effectively be used to promote and support the financing of transformational infrastructure projects, setting affordable housing standards, and providing adequate funding for Black-owned businesses. This element, together with the access to financial services element, is vital for unlocking the potential of South Africa's economy environment towards advancing the transformation agenda. As the African National Congress, we call upon all stakeholders who are at the core of redressing the social imperatives to embrace the collaborative commitment required to redress historical imbalances that continue to hinder our progress of achieving meaningful and impactful transformation in the sector. By fostering a more inclusive financial sector, we can cultivate an environment where the aspirations and talents of all South Africans can flourish irrespective of their background. Thank you, House Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I now recognize the Honourable Zibi before the Honourable Bapti. The Honourable Zibi, are you on the platform?
Yes, I am, Chair.
Please proceed, Honourable Member.
Thank you, Chairperson. Today's debate is fundamentally about industrialization, although the entry point is the role of the financial sector. I agree, the financial sector needs to diversify, transform, and change its thinking around its role. But no nation has ever industrialized without cheap electricity, readily available water, and an efficient transport and logistics system. Eskom needs over 500 billion for new transmission capacity, but it does not have that kind of money. This House has not yet debated how that money can be secured so that we can transmit electricity from new energy sources into businesses and homes. Transnet needs hundreds of billions in capital so that it can meet its mandate. It does not have that kind of money. Like Eskom, its balance sheet is weak and both borrowed hundreds of billions, subsequently stolen and wasted. The few major water projects we have are delayed in crisis with funds unaccounted for. Year after year, this House passes budgets that do not address even a fraction of this problem. Who wants to invest where you cannot move goods? Electricity is expensive and expansion of the water infrastructure is unlikely. Where are poor South Africans going to find work that pays them a living wage when 48% of young people that begin school do not finish and constitute 50% of unemployed South Africans today? Of course, this House can push the government to once again work with the SA Reserve Bank to reactivate the loan guarantee scheme, releasing over 100 billion into small and medium-sized businesses that create jobs. Last time, only 68 billion out of the 200 billion was taken up. 122 billion was unused. This House can insist on the Small Enterprise Development Agency being run by highly capable people so that it can be injected with billions of rand to help small businesses to succeed and make use of a new loan guarantee scheme. But we're not debating that. This House can insist on a 1.5% wealth tax and raise over 500 billion to inject into small and medium-sized businesses. There is no doubt that the financial sector has a significant role to play, but we need to get the policy basics right. Failure to do so continues to harm the South African people. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Bapti, who will deliver a maiden speech.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. Can you see me okay?
Yes, please proceed.
The Democratic Alliance welcomes this opportunity to participate in the debate. The developmental role of the financial sector in supporting industrialisation and structural transformation is a topic that strikes at the urgent need for economic growth and hence job creation. And this in an environment where millions of citizens seek better living standards and the dignity that is derived from full-time employment. Unemployment is debilitating. It impacts negatively on personal growth. It interferes with family security and stability. It erodes community values and it hampers progress. And so the pursuit of economic growth to drive job creation is an imperative that resides at the very heart of this topic. In considering the importance of the role in question, we must reflect on the current state of our economy and how it is structured. Growth in our gross domestic product reached a high of 5.6% in 2006. In 2022, it had fallen to 2%. Today, it sits at 0.4%. South Africa's grey listing, the failings in transport, in water provision, in energy generation and distribution, in policing, and the high levels of crime and corruption have made South Africa unattractive as an investment destination. The macroeconomic imbalances which are manifest in the budget deficits, massive state-owned enterprise bailouts, and dipping into our reserves to cover short-term debt costs. These are all indicators of an economy that is in need of structural change and urgent rescue. Treasury sounded the call for austerity measures and responsible spending, but ballooning government wage bills have pushed the capacity of the state to drive economic recovery to the brink. The hard realities of budget cuts are tearing through our nation in our schools, in our hospitals, and in our social services. The restoration of public infrastructure that supports economic sustainability is no longer realistically within the government's reach, unless there is buy-in from other players like the financial sector and additional investment capital from sources outside of government. The South African economy is heavily reliant on services, taking up 73% of the gross domestic product in the sector. Manufacturing is approximately 14% of GDP. And now with the real potential for beneficiation of our natural resources, with energy stability on the mend, and a commitment to much greener industries, the role of the financial sector becomes ever clearer. Shifting our economy into one that supports primary industries like mining and agriculture, secondary industries and manufacturing, in technology and in services, and participating in infrastructure builds for the essentials of water, energy, and transport. Clearly, there is a role that can and should be supported by the financial sector. The sector has opportunities to participate in industrialization and the restructuring of an inclusive economy through a number of strategies. Firstly, small and medium enterprises have struggled in the past because of a general shortage of capital, and that's because our policies are not capital friendly. And so we chase away capital from our shores. And because the government borrows so much, they make it very easy for the banks. At the end of the day, SMMEs cannot raise loan capital because they don't have the balance sheets that are necessary, and they are too risky to be worthwhile for banks to lend them money. They find it difficult to raise equity because equity investors regard South Africa as too risky. And this clearly then is an area in which closer collaboration, disciplined business practices, and risk management can play a role in closing the confidence gap. Secondly, a robust, well-regulated financial sector can encourage domestic savings, mobilize these funds to support large-scale industrial projects that drive economic growth. Finding equity partners and direct investment into key ventures can drive up business confidence and provide impetus where complementary manufacturing is needed. Thirdly, with the inherent capacity to undertake risk assessments, to manage those risks, to undertake market analysis, to scrutinize business plans, and to manage business accounts. These are all soft skills that can be deployed in SMMEs and in large industries that can benefit from increased efficiencies. The role of the financial sector as an agent for growing financial literacy and promoting financial training should not be ignored. Fourthly, a major component of our economic recovery rests on large-scale infrastructure programs that provide the necessary backbone to a conducive and reliable environment in which industries can flourish. Through participation in public-private partnerships, the financial sector can close the funding gap that the state is currently unable to source or afford. And the state has instruments like tax breaks and incentives to encourage such partnerships. In closing, Honourable Chair, the formation of the Government of National Unity is an opportune time for not just rebuilding our economy, but taking it to new heights of inclusiveness that change the lives of those millions of people I spoke of at the outset. The green shoots of this endeavour are visible in the small uptick in our growth that we are now seeing and the strengthening of our currency. Business confidence is returning. Investors are beginning to show interest. These are all positive signs that give us reason to believe that we can rebuild our economy in a way that serves our people and lays a foundation for our future generations to look back on us with respect. It is the builders in this new order that will break the cycle of poverty, and they can do this under adherence to the rule of law, with an ethical government, and with an undying belief in our resilience to prevail in the face of adversity. Our marvellous Boko have shown us how to play the long game and how to win. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Molefe. I think this is also a maiden speech.
Honourable Chair.
Yes.
Honourable
Chair, I am back. I was kicked out. It's Honourable Kalama Zibungo. And if I may get an opportunity, please, thank you. I'm sorry.
Who is speaking now?
Honourable Chair, is Honourable Mwali here. I'm standing in for Honourable Molefe.
Yes, please proceed. I'll ask the table staff to interact with the ANC, with a member that has now come back on the platform, because that slot has been taken already by another member.
The ANC is a little confused, Chair. I don't know.
The member from the MK party may continue. Thank you.
Chair, I'm saying the ANC general confused. I'm sure you've already
Oh,
realized.
we'll deal with it. We'll deal with it, Honorable Member. May I ask the member from the MK party now to proceed?
But
Thank
Chair,
you so much.
what is the role of having whips, Chair, if we are going to bring confusion in this platform
Yes, I will
by the
ask the
ANC?
whips. I will ask the whips to deal with the matter and the NA table staff to interact with them. It is a distraction to what we're busy with. We're right at the end of the speakers list now already. I now want to recognize the member of the MK party.
Honorable Chairperson, fellow members of Parliament, esteemed guests, I rise today on behalf of Umkhonto weSizwe Party to address the critical topic of developmental role of the financial sector in supporting the industrialization, structural transformation in South Africa. Our nation's future depends on how we strategically harness the power of the financial sector to drive industrial growth and transform our economy to benefit the majority. The financial sector is often seen as the backbone of any economy, but it must go beyond serving the interest of the wealth elite, multinational corporations. It must prioritize investments and promote local industries, job creation, sustainable development. South Africa's historical context, where inequality remains deeply entrenched, makes it imperative that our financial institutions become drivers of change, not simply protectors of wealth. Our industrialization agenda cannot be achieved without significant support from this sector. Industrialization is the engine of what helps us reduce unemployment, alleviate poverty, uplift our people. But for this to happen, financial institutions must direct resources to the sectors that are labor intensive and promote inclusive growth, particularly in manufacturing, agriculture, and technology. Structural transformation is not just about changing numbers on the balance sheet or increasing GDP. It is about fundamentally shifting the structures of our economy to serve the majority, particularly Black and the working class citizens who have been left out for too long. To achieve this, the financial sector must offer accessible and affordable credit to small businesses, cooperatives, and entrepreneurs, especially those marginalized, especially those from the marginalized communities. We must support local industries that process raw materials rather than simply exporting them, and empower South Africans manufacturers to compete globally. The role of the financial sector is to facilitate transformation by providing necessary capital, innovation, development, and expansion. We as Umkhonto weSizwe Party demand accountability from the financial sector. Too often we see this sector leading in support of the wealth, while the majority of South Africans struggle to access funding to start businesses and develop industries. This must change. We need a financial sector that is aligned with the government's broader development goals, one that prioritizes people over profit. It is also critical that government regulations ensure financial sector is contributing to our national development agenda. It cannot be as business as usual, where profits are privatized and cost of economic inequality are borne by the poorest. Under the leadership of President Jacob Zuma, the Umkhonto weSizwe has always emphasized the importance of economic transformation. President Jacob Zuma's unwavering commitment to advancing radical economic change is something we must continue to champion. He understood that true liberation, not just from the political freedom, but from economic emancipation. Our financial sector must be partners in realizing this vision and actively support the effort to build an economy that benefits all South Africans. In conclusion, honorable members, if we are to see meaningful industrialization and structural transformation, the financial sector must play its developmental role. This is not just a quest, it is an obligation. South Africans' future prosperity depend on collective efforts of government, industry, and the financial sector. Together, we must work to ensure the opportunities of growth and development are shared by all, not just the privileged few. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is Honourable Sekoati. Is the Honourable Sekoati on the platform? Can the table staff advise me if the Honourable Member is on the platform or not? Honourable Sekoati seems not to be on the platform. Honourable members, this then brings us to the end of this specific topic, and we will now proceed to the next subject for discussion. And this subject deals with the measures to alleviate the escalating financial strain placed on households due to the Republic's persistent cost of living crisis. I now invite the Honourable Mabhena, and I also invite the Honourable House Chairperson, Majosi, to preside over the rest of the session. Over to you.
Chair, do I wait for Honourable Majosi or do I start?
No, you can proceed, Honourable Mabhena. She will take over while you are busy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson Ngiyathokoza Sihlalo. The 7th Parliament represents the resilience of our democracy, the peaceful transfer of power from one administration to another, and the introduction of a government of national unity is proof that we remain a shining light. We are resilient as a people familiar with pain from forced removals, racial segregation to political violence. Yet, the days where citizens feel daily pain are no longer forced upon us, but chosen, as we are a free people. The state of our economy and associated cost of living crisis demonstrate this, as aside from a one-in-a-century pandemic, policy choices are the cause of where we find ourselves. We have chosen to make the wrong policy decisions, whether it be economic policy or governance. The looting of our economy by individuals and thugs still in this house was by design. Consequently, due to our choices as elected representatives, more than 8 million South Africans are without work, and nearly half of us cannot afford three daily meals. Our economy has not substantively grown in more than 15 years as a result of our own choices. Yet, the beauty of our democracy is that bad decisions can be rectified. And so, on the 14th of June 2024, a step in the right direction was made. Formerly opposing political forces joined hands in the greater interest of our republic through the signed statement of intent. Having made this step in the right direction, we must be focused on the path ahead as we dare not fall back. This government statement of intent sets out clear priorities. After a reaffirmation of founding principles, clear foundations are set. In context of this debate, the following is applicable. Section 8.3 commits this government to social justice and alleviation of poverty. Section 8.4 of the Statement of Intent commits to human dignity and the realization of socio-economic rights. Section 8.8 of the Statement of Intent commits this government to evidence-based policy making. Following the recent news of our growing unemployment, lackluster economic performance, and persistent cost of living pressures, we are obliged to meet our commitments. The priorities we must fulfill in this parliament include sustainable economic growth and structural reforms, tackling poverty, inequality, and ensuring all have a comfortable safety net, stabilizing our local governments where our citizens experience government firsthand, ridding our streets and homes of crime, and building a state capable for glorious people that call it home. This time around, we do not have the option for failure, and we have run out of second chances. Honorable House Chairperson, from the perspective of a portfolio member of transport, I am well aware of the daily battles our citizens face commuting across our country to make ends meet. The cost of transport exert enormous pressure on households eating into their bottom line. Not too long ago, following geopolitical tensions, we witnessed the enormous impact high fuel costs have across our economy. And while the price of fuel stabilizes, there is more to do. As the Democratic Alliance, we have long called for a review of the fuel price formula, which the President has announced as part of this government's program. Helping alleviate the cost of fuel will have a direct impact on the cost of food and general cost of living. We welcome this announcement and we are eager to see its implementation. Honorable House Chairperson, we strongly hold the view of cutting fuel costs, as in 2020, more than 80% of South Africans relied on a form of public transportation, whether it be taxis, buses, or trains. By lowering fuel costs, this will directly benefit the vulnerable in access to economic opportunities and also in the lowering the cost of essentials such as food. Over 60% South Africans use minibus taxis for travel and mobility, and we believe that this Government of National Unity-backed new policy direction in the form of fuel price intervention plan will go a long way in trickling down to the poor and vulnerable. As the Government of National Unity tackles the high cost of transport through this mechanism, we may also indirectly be tackling the high cost of food, as the cost of transporting food in this country is mainly by freight road instead of rail. Echoing the need for reforming our transport sector, Honorable House Chairperson, we also call on the Minister of Transport, Barbara Creecy, to accelerate the draft devolution strategy as part of the National Rail Policy. This will help to ensure that crucial rail services are in the hands of capable and competent local authorities, such as the City of Cape Town and the Western Cape Provincial Government, which is of agency. In some of the most successful democracies in the world, rail infrastructure is managed and coordinated at local level. This is except for fast-speed trains and long-distance commuting, which are managed and coordinated at national level. We also call on the Minister to ensure that Passenger Rail Agents of South Africa, PRASA, continues to recover as many corridors as possible. We need trains back on tracks, and we further need to roll out rail into more of our provinces. Metro rail, which is critical in urban areas, needs to not only be improved but expanded to different communities as a means to close our spatial inequalities. We are encouraged by positive signs in our Government of National Unity in as far as the trains are concerned, as last week we witnessed efficient transportation to and from the Springboks rugby game at the Emirates Park in Johannesburg. Trains were on time, clean, safe. While this is notable, it should be the norm going forward. Honorable House Chairperson, while we are still on rail, it is a fact that rail is the cheapest mode of transport in South Africa. However, South Africa's rail network is currently facing significant challenges, particularly in terms of outdated signaling infrastructure. The urgent need to modernize and overhaul the manual rail signaling systems cannot be overstated. Manual signaling systems are not only inefficient but also pose serious safety risks, contributing to delays, miscommunications, and also potential accidents and incidents. Transitioning to automated and digital signaling systems is critical to improving the overall efficiency and reliability of the rail network. Modern automated systems would enhance real-time monitoring, enable faster responses to potential hazards, and also reduce human error. This would not only streamline operations, but also ensure safer and more consistent services for both freight and passenger transport. Upgrading the signaling infrastructure would align South Africa with international standards, making the country's railways more competitive globally. We can make our economy to rely on rail for transportation of goods and people. Improving this infrastructure is key to boosting economic growth, reducing transportation costs, and contributing to sustainability by encouraging more use of rail over road transport. The digitization of rail signaling also opens the door for future innovations, such as predictive maintenance, which can further reduce disruptions by identifying and addressing potential issues before they cause system failures. Therefore, the modernization of rail signaling systems is not just a matter of immediate safety and efficiency, but a critical investment in South Africa's economic and infrastructural future. Lastly, we express deep concern and we reject Eskom's proposed 40% electricity tariff hike and the negative ripple effect this will have on our wider economy. We call on the Government of National Unity to revise this position, and we call for further engagement on the matter. Honorable House Chairperson, in closing, transport is the lifeblood of any thriving economy, a vital link that determines whether people can access opportunities or remain trapped in cycles of poverty. For the poor and vulnerable, affordable transport is not just a convenience, it's a lifeline. Without it, they are cut from jobs, education, and the chance for a better future. If we are to build a truly self-respecting economy, we must ensure that the most marginalized can move forward, not be left behind and remain locked out of economic prosperity. Ngiyathokoza Sihlalo, bayede ngwenyama. Dlula mithi kampo.
Thank you, Honorable Mabhena. We'll now go to Honorable Mahlaule.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. The rising cost of living is way too important a domestic crisis to be ignored or denied. Most South African citizens already know about and acknowledge the rising cost of living, as it was frequently debated in the 6th Parliament. So debating the rising cost of living is like kicking an open door. We have moved on from talking about this crisis to solving the crisis by taking action. Not surprisingly, this debate on the rising cost of living is not socially, economically, and politically neutral. Implicit in the debate is an attempt to look for a villain, rather than solutions to the rising cost of living. It seems to come very naturally for some among us to decide that when the South African economy is hit by a crisis, it must be because of the short-sightedness of the ANC in government. Such a conundrum gives rise to an unrealistic conclusion that the rising cost of living is the intention of the ANC in government, with the implicit assumption that the control over the cost of living is better taken out of the hands of the government and left to the perfectly working, if not self-correcting, unregulated markets. The ANC does not agree with the DA's fundamentally flawed dogma of simply privileging markets over the government, not only because unregulated markets are inherently unstable, but also because not a single effort is shared on the DA side in asking what determines the rising cost of living in South Africa. And from its liberal wisdom, the rising cost of living in South Africa is strictly endogenously determined. In other words, inefficiencies in the rail, ports, and electricity networks, for example, increase production costs for firms, and in turn, firms pass the increased production costs on to their customers. As a result, exogenous factors, what that means increases in oil prices as well as in key inputs that produce staple food items such as wheat, maize, and grain, and the raising of domestic coal prices near to the import parity are taken as exogenously given constants and are therefore unexplained in the rising cost of living. The ANC differs with the DA's finger-pointing perspective, which undermines our ability to prevent the rising cost of living from happening again because it is obsessed about blaming the ANC. Whilst the ANC acknowledges that endogenous factors may account for the rising cost of living, the party is convinced that the exogenous factors dominate endogenous factors. But this does not imply that endogenous factors are desirable or even acceptable. Undesirable and unacceptable endogenous factors include the use of buyer power by giant retailers to negotiate discounted wholesale prices, which seldom transmit to lower consumer prices. Rather, discounted wholesale prices enable giant retailers to generate super oligopoly profits by maintaining high retail prices. This analysis is missing in the DA's widely inaccurate link between the rising cost of living and endogenous factors. This omission is deliberate because most giant retailers were formed during colonialism and apartheid, and they have partially co-opted our partners. The rising cost of living is driven mainly by a cost push or imported inflation, which prolongs declines in output, employment, and investment, and is responsible for the long damage to the South African economy. A good illustration of this is the Competition Commission's Essential Food Price Monitoring Report of March 2023, which reveals that food prices in South Africa remain vulnerable to exogenous factors. And for an example, South Africa imports about a third of its wheat from Ukraine and Russia, and hence the impact of the conflict between these nations has been significant increase in wholesale prices of bread and cereal, which were transmitted to retail prices. Whilst the effect of this conflict on imported inflation have subsided, lower prices of import wheat has not been transmitted into lower bread and cereal prices due to the opportunistic behavior of supermarkets with high market power in the grocery retail industry. It is sufficient to note that the DA allows this opportunistic behavior because the posture informing its policy is that unregulated markets generate optimal prices, even if optimal prices had poor and the working class customers. Another most telling evidence of the nature of the cost push inflation is the rise in free on board and post-duty prices of frozen bone in pieces following the April 2021 and March 2022 decisions to introduce anti-dumping tariffs on frozen bone in pieces and to ban import of chicken from European Union in response to the avian flu outbreak, respectively. These decisions have resulted in poor and working class customers paying higher chicken prices in South Africa. Whilst the FOB and post-duty prices of frozen bone in pieces declined, causing higher chicken prices to collapse, this did not come without any economic cost. Most obvious is that poor and working class households have been relying on microfinance instruments from loan sharks and credit flows from commercial banks to hedge themselves against food price hikes. And the downside of this development has been the rising of both household debt and debt-income ratios. More crucially, attempts to control inflationary pressures of cost-push variety through interest rate hikes have been self-defeating as they increase debt servicing costs and reduce the purchasing power parity of poor and the working class customers. We need a rapid intervention on this issue, but it must not be a drastic and panicky intervention as often suggested by slothful parties crying wolf like the so-called progressive forces. International oil price hikes following Russia's invasion of Ukraine further completes the cost-push inflation argument advanced by the ANC. Higher oil prices have an effect primarily through increases in domestic fuel prices. Simply put, higher oil prices filter through the higher domestic fuel prices and thereby trigger food inflation as food items and other essentials must be transported from farms and factories to distribution centers and from the retail stores. A neat illustration of this is to consider the common practice by giant retailers of raising margins to correspond to the transportation cost increases. Government intervention in this case through unchanged road accident fund and general fuel levies during 2022-2023 financial year was seen as totally effective relief measures. These relief measures simply neutralize the negative effect of higher fuel prices on transportation costs, thereby countervailing food inflation and the high cost of both private and public transport. But these relief measures did not eventually tame the rising cost of living in the long run for two reasons. Firstly, the liquidation of Comair, which operated Kulula.com and British Airways, resulted in higher transportation costs. and hence relief measures were slow to adjust to changes in transportation costs. Secondly, the inverse relationship between the relief measures and the value of the rand did not exhibit the counter-cyclical behavior that the government had hoped for, since the value of the rand is crucial for domestic fuel prices. In short, if the rand is weaker relative to the US dollar, we pay more fuel as a net importer of refined petroleum products. And the value of the rand has been on a downward trend for years now. Interestingly, one of the factors that weakened the rand is deregulation of exchange rate and capital controls, which were championed by the National Party, which some of us has morphed into during the negotiations for a democratic South Africa. Lastly, electricity tariffs have been set above...
A point of order, Chairperson.
Honorable Mahlaule, can we please pause and let's take a point of order? Yes, Honorable Tambo.
I wanted to check. I'm not sure if I misheard the speaker. Did he say that they have morphed into the National Party during these negotiations or past negotiations? I just wanted clarity on that. If he could repeat that sentence, we were stuttering a bit.
Okay, that's not a point of order, but a point of clarity. We
Yeah,
will
let me
then ask
clarify.
Honorable Mahlaule if
I was
if
referring
he
to
is
the
willing
DA,
to,
Honorable Naotambo.
if he's willing to respond to that and maybe repeat what he has said. I don't know.
Yes.
We'll take it from you, Honorable Mahlaule.
I was saying which the DA has morphed into during the negotiations for a democratic South Africa.
Oh, apologies, Chair. I heard him say us, so I thought he meant the ANC. No, that's fine. You can proceed.
No, not the
No
ANC.
problem. Yeah, can we then let's not have a back-to-back conversation. It's all resolved now. Can we move on? Please wrap up, Honorable Mahlaule.
Chair, I was saying lastly, electricity tariffs have been set above inflation for a while now. The ANC appreciate critiques against Eskom's electricity tariff increases, but only within a framework that respects evidence. The persistent increase in electricity tariffs is partly due to the cost overruns at Medupi and Kusile, which the media used to create an automatic mistrust between the citizens and the ANC. The deeper causes of increases in electricity tariffs that the media filters are pricier diesel, which Eskom has been using for to fuel its emergency plans to offset higher load shedding stages amid international oil price hikes and higher import parity prices for coal, which Eskom uses to run its coal fleet. The higher cost of diesel and coal must be recouped since below-cost electricity tariffs are not different to throwing a gasoline on fire. In the city of Cape Town, increases in electricity tariffs exert pressures on the rising cost of living, simultaneously with unaffordable water tariffs and the asset bubble in the property market, which result in inflated property rentals. The cost of inflated property rentals are not shared equally across all races in the city of Cape Town. Inflated property rentals squeeze
Honorable Mahlaule,
from all sides, but
unfortunately, your
benefit
time
white
has
people
expired.
who are property owners and are therefore DA's natural
Honorable
host.
Mahlaule.
Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you.
Chair.
Let's...
Kalipi,
Yes, Honorable Kalipi.
I just need a clarity. The time that was allocated to Honorable Mhlaule was 10 minutes.
Yes.
And is above that. So can you clarify that?
Yes, it is 10 minutes. That is why I came in and said the time has expired.
No, he spoke more than 10 minutes. He started speaking at 11:24. And it's 11:37.
Honorable Mkhalipi, the
Yes, Chair.
time is allocated and it is controlled on the side of the table. So when the time has expired, they are able to tell me And I then able to say that to the honorable member on the platform to say that your time has expired. So he was allocated 10 minutes. And it is 10 minutes when they told me that now the time has expired.
No,
And that's when I unmuted and told him.
no, Chair, you must speak to your table. You must speak to your table because we are not full as we are here as well. You can't be telling us that is controlled that side. We are even having watches here. We are watching as well in terms of time. So that's why I'm bringing to your attention what will happen because he spoke for more than 10 minutes.
No, Honorable Mkhaliphi, remember the time was stopped when your member raised a point of order.
Chair,
And that time,
Chair, when my member raised a point of order, it was already 10:35. No, it was already 11:35. I was watching, Chair. Don't be biased. No, don't be biased, Chair.
This. It was 10 minutes.
No, but you must also not be biased because we are raising a genuine issue. It's in terms of the rules. You even giving us a speakers list and then you are allocating time for speakers.
Exactly.
And then you are raising to you that no, he has spoken more than 10 minutes. Please attend to it.
Discuss this. I have said that his time has expired because
don't be arrogant. You are bringing to your attention that the time that is allocated to him is more than 10 minutes.
Let's move to Honorable Kasa from the MK.
No, Chair. Chair on a point of order.
Honorable Mautwe.
Yeah, Honorable Mkhaliphi is raising an issue and we are requesting you, the Chair, to go and check it with the table staff. Because indeed, the member spoke for more than 10 minutes. So instead of you dismissing it, just say you will come back to the House. You will check with the table staff and come back to the House. That's all we're asking for.
Honorable Mautwe, I have explained as well to Honorable Mkhaliphi that when your member raised a point of order, then the time was stopped. And then it had to continue after that point has been raised and it was resolved that it was a matter of clarity and he had clarified that. So in the midst of Honorable Mahlaule clarifying that, you can't then use his time. So it was stopped on that process only. Then it was resumed after. That is why you will find that there is an extra allocation. It was because of that duration of the time that we had used in a point of order. So I was explaining that to Honorable Mkhaliphi, and I am saying that I have the table with me here, and it advised me immediately when they said the time has expired. I immediately unmuted and told Honorable Mahlaule that your time has expired and we need to move to the other honorable member. So there is no way that I'm going to be biased and give others extra time or not, but the time is controlled at the table and they're able to tell me when it is time, when the time is expired. So during that process, it happened in that manner. And as I've explained to Honorable Mkhaliphi, that I will not be biased to anyone, but I am merely stating what transpired during the debate. So please, can we move on? And if there is another point of order, you stop your time as well as you are counting on your own, on your other side. Because if you are not, then you will see an excess time that has been added, and that is not the truth. It is because of the point of orders that was raised at that time. Please, can we then move to our next speaker, which is Honorable Kasa?
The issue is that you treat us like we're new members. We're not new members. Honorable Mkhaliphi is the most senior and experienced member of this House. There's no way she was going to have a confusion of stopping the time when there's a point of order. We know those rules. We make the rules. So please.
I have said that what happened, and I am advised by the table when the time has expired. So I am asking that can we please move on with the debate? I am not going to be biased on anyone on the allocation of time. Everyone is given a time.
We are raising an issue with you as the chair. A good chair will say, let me check with the table staff, because we are saying to you, please check, we're watching. When Honorable Tambo said order, Mhlaule was already on 10:35, on 11:35. His time was supposed to be 10 minutes from 11:24 to 11:34. And then he continues speaking until 11:37. That is more than 1 minute, Chair. Yeah, go and check. Don't be arrogant.
No, Honorable Mkalipi, I have the table staff with me here. So they are able to advise when the time is expired. And immediately when they said so, I then pressed unmute and I continue to say, Honorable Mahlaule, your time has expired. So there is no time that I gave to Honorable Mahlaule that is extra. As I explained before, and I've made a ruling on this one, that can we move on to the next speaker? I am not going to be biased on anyone. Everyone who is given an allocation of time will get their allocated time that they are given. And please, you do not know, maybe your time that you are using that side and the table time is two different things. So you might not even know that you are moving on the same correct time. So please, can we not make an issue out of this?
House
But
Chairperson.
if the table informs me of the expired time of a member, I will do so. I will unmute and tell the member that the time is expired. I will never be biased on any other member. So can we please move to Honorable Gas? I'm not going to entertain any more hands
point of
on
clarity.
this matter. Yes, Honorable Tambo.
Yes, House Chairperson. I want to understand, and it's linked to my previous clarity because I'm still not clarified. Because the Honorable Shaoli spent his 13 to 15 minutes practically denouncing the government of national unity. So I want to understand, is the ANC part of the government of national unity or not? Because
No,
his
you're out of
distancing
order,
from the
Honorable
DA
Tambo.
and its policies
Honorable Tambo,
is leaving
you are
us
out of
confused. We
order.
must know how to hold you accountable. Are you
Honorable
one government
Tambo.
or not?
Honorable
You're
Tambo.
confusing us, House Chair. No, House Chair, I'm
No,
genuinely
Honorable
confused.
Tambo.
Because he
Honorable
speaks
Tambo.
as if they are not running government together.
Honorable Tambo, I'm cautioning
Chair.
you now. I'm not going to call you again and you not respond and you keep on speaking.
No, I couldn't hear you,
Honorable
House Chair.
Tambo.
But it's a fair question. We are holding
Honorable
government
Tambo.
accountable.
Honorable Tambo.
Yeah.
I am saying to you, you raised a point of order, of which it was a point of clarity. We moved away from that. Honorable Mahlaule's time has expired. You can't come back now when there is no speaker on the platform and say you are raising a point of order. You should have then continued on that point of order while he was on the platform. But now you are raising a point of order of which you are out of order yourself. Can we please move on? I am now going to call Honorable Gas.
Thank you, House Chairperson, honorable members of Parliament, and fellow South Africans. Ngiyanibingelela. The MK Party, under the leadership of President Jacob Zuma, stands here today to confront a crisis that is affecting all South Africans, the escalating cost of living. We can no longer turn a blind eye to the hardships our people are facing. Every day, ordinary citizens are struggling to make ends meet as prices for food, fuel, and basic services soar to unbearable levels. What we are witnessing is not just an economic crisis, it is a political crisis caused by years of mismanagement and misguided policies by those in power. The so-called solutions offered by the ruling government are nothing more than band-aid fixes that fail to address the root causes of the problem. The people of South Africa deserve better, and the MK Party is here to offer real solutions that put the needs of people first. Ubaba Zuma, our president, has always emphasized that economic freedom is the foundation of real liberation. Political freedom without economic justice is meaningless. The rising cost of living has exposed the deep structural inequalities in our economy, where the rich continue to get richer, while the majority of South Africans are pushed further into poverty. Umkhonto weSizwe believes that there are several urgent steps that must be taken to alleviate the crisis. Okokuqala nje, regulating food prices. It is unacceptable that the prices of basic goods such as maize meal, bread, and cooking oil are increasing at a rate that outpaces wages. Umkhonto weSizwe calls for immediate intervention to regulate food prices and prevent price gouging by large corporations that exploit the people for profit. Secondly, addressing the fuel crisis. Fuel prices are directly linked to the rising cost of living, and every South African feels this when they go to the pump. We must prioritize reducing fuel costs through subsidized and strategic reserves, as well as exploring long-term solutions to reduce our dependence on international markets that dictate prices. Thirdly, providing free basic services. Water, electricity, and sanitation are basic human rights. Umkhonto weSizwe proposes the expansion of free basic services to ensure that the most vulnerable members of society do not have to choose between feeding their families and keeping the lights on. This government has failed to prioritize the needs of the poor, and Umkhonto weSizwe, guided by President Zuma, will correct this injustice. Okunye, reversing privatization. The rampant privatization of state assets has only benefited a few at the expense of the many. The MK Party calls for a halt to privatization of essential services and for key sectors such as energy, water, and healthcare to remain in the hands of the state to serve the people, not to corporate interest. Creating jobs through public works programs. The government has failed to address the unemployment crisis, which exacerbates the financial strain on families. Umkhonto weSizwe supports massive public works programs that will create jobs and rebuild our infrastructure, providing a dignified livelihood for millions of South Africans. House Chairperson, the cost of living crisis we face today is a direct result of a government that has lost touch with the people. Umkhonto weSizwe, under the leadership of President Jacob Zuma, stand firm in our belief that economic liberation cannot wait any longer. We will not rest until the people of South Africa are free from the chains of poverty, exploitation, and inequality. The measures I have outlined today are not mere proposals. They are a call to action, a call for this government to step aside and let those who truly care about the well-being of the people take the reins. The MK Party is ready to lead, ready to implement radical change, and ready to deliver economic justice to the people. In conclusion, South Africa needs a government that is not afraid to challenge the status quo. And the MK Party is that government. We are not beholden to international capital or the interest of the elites. We stand with the people. Simile nabantu, for the people, and we will not stop until every
Kasa, your time is expired.
I thank you.
Thank you. Let us now move on to Honorable Alexander. But before you come in, can I please inform the plenary that Honorable Abrahams is not available. So the 7 minutes that you see on Honorable Alexander, 3 minutes will be added for him, and also 3 minutes will be added for Mabhena for the closing. So Honorable Alexander will no longer have 7 minutes, but will get 10 minutes because Honorable Abrahams is not available. So I want you, when you then set your clocks, you must know that Honorable Alexander is going to speak for 10 minutes. Over to you, Honorable Alexander.
Thank you very much, House Chair. Good morning, colleagues. South Africans have faced severe cost of living pressures following the COVID-19 pandemic, which have strained households and hindered our economic growth. Rising food prices, coupled with persistent electricity tariff hikes and high interest rates, have pushed our families to the brink. Our country's varying economic crises since 2008 are the threats to our democratic fabric. We have been in and out of recession since the previous parliament, having entered COVID-19 in a technical recession. Since the lift of the national state of disaster, we have continued to teeter on the edge. How is it that a nation as rich as ours in resources and people are on a trajectory where our economy has become increasingly unpredictable, with periods of growth and contraction seeming to alternate almost randomly, like the outcome of a coin toss? Some in government have also come to celebrate the sub 1% economic growth, a shocking sense of mediocrity that cannot be normalized. South Africans deserve much better. With our stagnating economy, high unemployment and poverty rates, this is only a recipe to tear our nation apart, not bring us together. Our benchmark must be to achieve at least 4 to 5% annual economic growth in order to create the jobs our people need and to alleviate the appalling poverty too many face. Recent consumer inflation data points to continuing economic pain as basic necessities like housing, food, and transport continue to be unaffordable. How is it in a democratic South Africa that families are forced to choose between essentials items like bread, milk, eggs, and baby food? It is frankly inhumane. The price of a loaf of bread has increased from 13 Rand in 2017 to 18 Rand today. Likewise, in the same period, the price of 2 liters of milk has increased from 26 Rand to 35 Rand. Further basics like tea have seen a 76% increase, potatoes 72%, and eggs 81% increase. Colleagues, this is simply unacceptable. As entrusted elected representatives, we must continue to question whether our decisions in this House leave South Africa better or worse off. As come a few years, the electorate will hold us to account on the decisions we make on their behalf. Following COVID-19, the global economy still grapples with supply chain disruptions, also heightened by geopolitical tensions and trade policy changes. While these disruptions have led to shortages, increasing costs, and uncertainty, our peers are faring far better than us. We continue to be outpaced by our fellow emerging markets. Some include our neighbors like Botswana and Ghana, and at this rate, we'll lose our standing on the continent and in the world. Whether it be food, water, electricity, housing, or other needs, the fundamentals of our economy wither. History teaches important lessons on how economic downfalls can lead nations to ruin. But what can we do about this? An area that we can make an immediate and significant impact is food affordability. While our VAT system exempts certain food items, we can certainly do more. We have consistently proposed the expanded list of VAT-exempt food items that are critical in daily meals. While we welcome the President's announcements on the regard, we look forward to seeing the concrete steps which we anticipate seeing in the medium-term budget at the end of October. Though expanding the basket of VAT-exempt foods, we can not only save South Africans from hunger, but also bring financial relief to many that need the necessary breathing room to make it to the next month, save for a rainy day, or just invest. Further actions must be taken in Parliament include a comprehensive social economic policy framework to secure investor confidence, bring reforms to our dysfunctional ports, which rank among the most ineffective in the world. While so many trade links are available to us, we need to ensure our minerals and exports can reach our ports through working freight and logistic systems. Ensure energy security and a just energy transition so load shedding can be a forgotten memory. Strengthen our local governments, which are the front line to business operations. But continually, we see an increasing concern from the Office of the Auditor General, as well as reduce crime as our streets are increasingly unsafe to live in, let alone invest. While we discuss financial strain on household, let us remember that this is more than just a statistics and theories. These are real people with real lives and real futures. Like the steps of the Legislative House remind us, we are a land of freedom, dignity, unity, and accountability. Let us continue to heed our founding principles, as our democracy is the best treasure we have. Thank you, House Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Alexandra. We can now proceed to Honorable Tambo.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson. House Chairperson, too often than not, when we reflect on the high cost of living in South Africa, we talk about numbers, data, rands, and cents. When we talk about the cost of living in this country, it's easier for us to discuss the cost of the food basket, the political nature of the rand, and the need to keep the rand strong against its competitors. It is easy for us to talk about poverty in this way because it removes the human experience and consequences of the collapsing economy that we theorize about. We are more preoccupied with keeping the financial sector afloat as a country than we are with keeping the people afloat, who suffer daily due to a high cost of living. The fact of the matter is South Africa's high cost of living has tangible victims, like Nsizela, the mother of Iapa, aged 4, Pile, aged 8, and Inga, aged 12, who were found dead in Lusikisiki in September 2023 after the mother fed the 3 children poisonous pills and proceeded to take her own life because she could no longer bear to watch them suffer from hunger. The higher cost of living in South Africa has victims, like Bonge Gabuso from Butterworth, who took the lives of her daughters, Orabile, who was aged 8, Oratile, who was aged 5, and the life of her teenage daughter, who was aged 14, before taking her own life, because living was more costly than dying. The high cost of living we are debating here today has taken lives and will continue to do so if we do not take drastic measures to curb the persistent increase in the cost of living. And at the center of solving this crisis is job creation, massive industrialization, and the promotion of involvement by our people in subsistence and commercial farming. This means that at the center of curbing the high cost of living must be the promotion of state capacity in job creation and provision of land, which must be accustomed by the relevant tools and skills capacitation so that people can use land to enrich themselves and others. Additionally, a major contributing factor to the high cost of living is the misguided macroeconomic policies of the South African Reserve Bank, which has consistently prioritized financial sector interests over and above the people. It must now be an accepted fact that the monetary policy instrument implemented by the South African Reserve Bank since July 2022, when it increased the repo rate from 4.75% to 5.5%, was misguided. The recent decline in the consumer price inflation from 5.1 to 4.6% between June and July 2024 is therefore not only a welcome relief, but an opportunity to pursue a more sensible economic policy trajectory. The fact of the matter is it is only the banks that benefit from the constant increase in the repo rate. They are recording high levels of profit out of the debt-ridden South African consumer, whose monthly repayments for their homes, cars increases the repo rate increases. This is the policy platform of the DA and ANC alliance and ostensibly the so-called GNU. That is why I found it funny that the Honorable Mhlawule has spent more than 10 minutes denouncing the economic environment where the DA governs, because he seemingly does not have an appreciation that his organization, the ANC, has been entrenching and pursuing DA policies through its control of treasury. And this is what creates a high cost of living. The economy has not grown, no jobs have been created, and no factories have been built from this narrow macroeconomic strategy that prioritizes the financial sector. And instead, people have chosen to die than live in a South Africa characterized by hunger and debt. A measure, therefore, to curb the high cost of living from a financial standpoint is that the South African Reserve Bank and Monetary Policy Committee must abandon high interest rates that induce unemployment and suffocate consumers to high levels of debt. The interest rate must be cut from 150 basis points, which would bring the repo rate down to 6.75%. And anything other than this mechanism, which would remove the financial sector as the golden child of our economy, will lead to continued increases in the cost of living, unemployment, debt, and ultimately death. So the DA and the ANC cannot try to speak in different terms because they are pursuing the same thing, and that is the death of our people through their macroeconomic policies that prioritize the private sector. I thank you, House Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Tambo. Honorable Stolle.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. Quality of life in South Africa is deteriorated due to the high cost of living. Many citizens, both employed and unemployed, are struggling under the burden of the high cost of basic necessities, essentially for a dignified life. South Africa, especially planning, continue to disadvantage individually from marginalized communities. This arises from the reality that any form of economic participation necessitates the use of transportation. It is worth noting that although there have been successive fuel price decrease, these reductions have not translated into lower food and transport costs. Trains remain the most affordable mode of transportation in South Africa. Many low-income workers depend on this mode of transportation. This is due to the affordability and the option to purchase weekly or monthly tickets. However, South Africa's rail system remains unreliable, leaving low-income workers to travel with uncertainty. As recently as May of this year, commuters were left stranded without refunds, forcing them to seek alternative modes of transportation at their own expenses from any already strained budget. One way to ease the financial strain on household budget is to ensure that trains operate at optimally efficiency. It is crucial that the Minister of Transport, along with the executive of the PRASA and Transnet, coordinate with ministers in peace and security cluster. This necessity arises from the fact that one of the key reasons training cannot operate optimally is due to track syndicate that sabotaged the rail infrastructure shared by these two entities. Taxis play a crucial role in transporting the vast majority of citizens to their working place. This is backed by the Statistic SA survey, which found that 15 million commuters depend on this mode of transportation daily. Furthermore, Honorable Chairperson, taxis play a vital role in connecting citizens from remote areas to regions with economic activities. The most vulnerable members of our society, including the low-income workers and social grant recipients, spend 1/5 of their income on transport, leaving them unable to afford nutritious food and forcing them to settle for what they can afford. Trains and buses already receive government subsidies, so it makes sense to extend this support to the taxi industry, given the crucial role it plays in transportation. This subsidy should not be a one-time intervention. It will help taxi operators manage their operation cost, and in the long term, commuters will benefit to reduced fees. This will free up more money for household budget. In conclusion, Honorable Chairperson, the IFP always asks for the implementation of all the plans and coordination among government agencies and the private sectors. It is essentially that these interventions are sustainable and do not inadvertently create long-term fiscal challenges. The IFP sihlalo isikhathi esiningi ihlala icela namanje isacela ukuthi icela kube khona indlela zokuthi i-taxi industry iyancedwa njengoba kuncedwa amabhasi. Ngiyathokoza sihlalo.
Thank you, Honorable Sithole. We'll now proceed to PA. Okay, we'll then move on to Freedom Fund Plus, Honorable Van Staden.
PA doesn't work of Parliament serious. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson.
Honorable Paulsen. Sorry, excuse me, Honorable Van Staden. Honorable Paulsen, no one recognized you to speak. You did not raise a point of order. Why are you speaking? Can we please stick to the rules of the virtual sitting? Please continue, Honorable Van Staden.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Gedurende Augustus vanjaar het 'n meningspeiling verskyn oor bestedingsgewoontes van Suid-Afrikaners en hoe moeilik veral arme mense dit vind om daagliks net te oorleef. Hierdie peiling het aangetoon dat Suid-Afrikaners met 'n inkomste van R2500 per maand besteed gemiddeld R758 per maand om kos te koop. En landsburgers met 'n inkomste van R60,000 per maand se besteding aan kos beloop gemiddeld R4600 per maand. Hierdie peiling het ook aangetoon dat die gemiddelde persentasie wat alle Suid-Afrikaners van hul inkomste aan kos bestee beloop tans 11%. 'n Ander peiling wat deur 'n finansiële instelling gedoen is, het weer aangetoon dat 55% van Suid-Afrikaners nie geld kan spaar nie en dat 31% glad nie vir hul aftrede kan spaar nie. Die peiling het ook aangetoon dat 11% van die bevolking maandeliks meer bestee as wat hulle verdien. Dis maak hulle ekstra skuld net om te kan oorleef. Van die 45% mense wat elke maand ietsie kan spaar, kan slegs 'n bedrag van R950 wegsit. Die peiling het ook aangetoon dat mense afskaal op die aankope van klere, kos, vermaak, om as gevolg van die stygende lewenskoste net deur die maand te kan kom, om nie eens te praat van verblyf, water en elektrisiteit, vervoer en skoolgeld nie. South Africans at the moment have no choice but to make more debt just to simply survive. South Africans want to save money, but circumstances simply don't allow for that to happen. South Africans are struggling to survive, but rising living costs, unemployment, and economical uncertainty are one of the biggest causes why people are falling deeper and deeper into debt. This also put a huge strain on the South African economy. Dit is daarom geen wonder dat daar duisende mense wat wel 'n pensioenfonds het, nou met die nuwe tweepotstelsel reeds aansoek gedoen het om van hul aftreefondsgeld te onttrek nie. Die afgelope week is daar berig dat die staatsdiens pensioenfonds reeds versoeke van 17,000 staatsamptenare ontvang het om van hul aftreefondsgeld te onttrek. Die waarde wat hierdie onttrekking beloop tans R471 miljoen. Wat gaan die mense met hierdie geld maak? Dalk uitstaande skuld betaal of dalk kos koop, wie weet. The fact of the matter is that South Africa is currently in a very bad situation. We as a government of national unity will have to put some measures in place to help the economy grow so that there can be a significant job creation. With an unemployment rate of 33.5%, it should be a wake-up call to remind us of a poor situation we are currently in. So, what do we do? Hoe gaan ons die toenemende finansiële druk wat op ons huishoudings geplaas word en hierdie lewenskoste krisis verlig of uitwis? Die antwoord is dalk nie so eenvoudig nie, maar ons as politici moet by onsself begin. Hier, nou, waar ons nou hieroor debatteer, want alles wat ons in hierdie parlement sê of doen, het 'n wesenlike invloed op die alledaagse bestaan van alle Suid-Afrikaners. Ons kan herbou deur gelyke toegang tot geleenthede. Die oorsake van die huidige verval lê by die beleid wat 'n gunstige omgewing vir wanbestuur, korrupsie en bedrog geskep het. Daarom moet ons gekant wees teen maatreëls wat teen mense op grond van ras diskrimineer, soos regstellende aksie en swart ekonomiese bemagtiging. Om raskwotas af te dwing is niks anders as 'n veelvuldige onreg nie. Die uitgangspunt om armoede te verlig en welvaart te skep deur welvaart te verdeel, sal nooit slaag nie. As gevolg van hierdie beleidsrigtinge vind ekonomiese groei nie plaas nie en neem armoede en werkloosheid toe. Hierdie beleidsrigtinge spreek nie armoede aan nie, maar skep 'n nuwe apartheid van die politieke elite teenoor die gewone burgers van die land. Die vertrekpunt in beleidsrigtinge van die regering vir nasionale eenheid moet eerder fokus om 'n beter toekoms te bou as op transformasie en herverdeling. Die toegang tot gelyke geleenthede moet bevorder word en ekonomiese groei moet 'n prioriteit wees. Met volhoubare ekonomiese groei sal daar meer fondse beskikbaar wees om in maatskaplike behoeftes te voorsien. Werkskepping sal minder mense van die staat afhanklik maak vir maatskaplike funksies. I'm concluding, Chairperson. The saying goes that each generation is responsible for its own era. This is now the time to have a positive turning point to mark the beginning of building a better South Africa for all. Let's repair and build. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Beasley.
Thank you, Chair, and colleagues and South Africans. The cost of living crisis in South Africa is putting immense pressure on citizens to make ends meet. One of the main drivers of these rising costs is the increase in prices due to inflation. Although there's been some reprieve in recent months, load shedding coupled with the cost of electricity remains a constant threat. To address this, we need to open up the energy markets to competition, which will help lower prices and make electricity more affordable for everyone. As a party committed to economic justice, Action SA recognizes that many South Africans require immediate support. That is why we have proposed the introduction of a universal basic income support grant that aligns with the poverty line and scales up from there. This initiative will provide immediate relief to the most vulnerable members of our society while simultaneously stimulating much needed economic growth. We also know that housing is far too expensive. As Mayor of Johannesburg, Action SA President Herman Mashaba expropriated hijacked buildings and transformed them into low-cost housing and student accommodation in the inner city close to places of work and study. This well-located housing not only provides affordable living options, but also saves citizens on transport costs. We believe that this type of intervention is a model for the necessary innovative ideas that can bring relief to citizens who simply cannot keep up with the rising cost of housing. Additionally, we have proposed the expansion of VAT exemptions to include everyday items and basic necessities. These interventions aim to alleviate the financial burdens faced by South Africans in a systemic way. Furthermore, we believe in reducing unnecessary government expenditure. Our proposals include cutting the number of cabinet ministers to under 20 from the current 32 and eliminating deputy minister positions altogether. As cost of living has continued to increase, so too has the national executive, which has increased from 36 to 75 in the last 20 years. The link between the increasing size of the cabinet and rising cost of living is not coincidental and speaks to a government that is out of touch with reality and who puts themselves and their egos before the people they serve. It is criminal that the cabinet is getting fatter and South Africans are getting poorer. It is criminal and it is a disgrace. Reducing the size of the cabinet will save South Africans over R1 billion, which could be redirected towards frontline services that directly improve the lives of our citizens. These are some of the interventions that Action SA as a constructive, rational opposition in Parliament are championing to help bringing down the cost of living for all South Africans. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We'll go to UDM. There's no one that has been allocated. Is there anyone from UDM? Let's proceed to ACDP. Is there anyone from ACDP? Let's proceed then to BOSA, Honorable Webster.
Thank you, House Chair.
Honorable Webster. Oh, thank you. Yes.
Thank you, House Chair. There are a number of measures that need to be taken to alleviate the financial strain on South Africans, and these are, for the most part, in our perspective as BOSA, two-pronged. There are issues which require direct intervention, some which could be immediate. And some of these issues speak to the fact that there is double taxing on South Africans because of the lack of basic service delivery. We can't start this conversation and not speak about the issue of water. So many citizens in South Africa right now, because we have a looming crisis as it pertains to water, infrastructure that is broken, interrupted supply, and sometimes even extortion, are having to make sure that they have to pay for water, whether they are paying water tanker trucks or whether they are having to go out and buy water because there's simply just no water available for them. Sometimes these are unemployed, and often these are unemployed citizens. Sometimes this is the indigent. And so we have to make sure that we fix issues of service delivery that include water, because this adds strain, financial strain to South Africans. The second issue that we need to look at is the issue of safety. When South Africans are not safe, they have to make sure that they find other ways. When the state is failing to keep the roads safe, to keep schools safe, to keep business areas safe, South Africans are then double taxed again because they have to make sure that they are keeping their environment safe. I've spoken briefly to the issue of extortionists, where South Africans are having to pay to trade, to pay to be able to run their own businesses, to pay to have basic services such as water. And that further adds a strain to South Africans. And the last issue is the issue of electricity and electricity tariffs. Government must be able to regulate that better in being able to cap or freeze electricity tariffs given the current financial strain on South Africans. And related to that is the issue of local government effectively implementing the indigent policy so that those who are unable to pay for these services are able to get support. Now, the second intervention or approach is that of employment and employment creation. A lot of the issues that exist in terms of financial strain are because we have the high level of unemployment that we have. Yet we have a Department of Small Business Development that goes unchecked, a department that is the custodian of SMMEs, which have a target of 90% contribution towards employment by 2030, according to the NDP, but a department that goes without accounting for or reporting on the bottom line of employment creation. We have to hold that department to account, because that is where we're going to be able to create employment and alleviate the strain of unemployment in the country. We have further got to expand financial support, tax incentives and grants for SMMEs, so that we're able to protect jobs, so that we're able to improve household incomes, and so that we're able to have more jobs and have the creation of more jobs by SMMEs in this country. All in all, we are at a place where we have to act with a matter of urgency, whether it's the direct interventions
Honorable Webster,
or the employment.
Unfortunately, your time has expired.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Let's move to ATM. ATM. We'll then move to Al-Jama. Al-Jama. I will now call on ANC Honorable Malimaja.
Thank you so much, Chair. All South Africans are rightfully concerned about the rise in the cost of living since the end of COVID-19 pandemic. Speaking to the ANC on the topic is essentially preaching to the converted by those who also stay in glass houses. When there are problems, all parties took to the ANC as if has messianic powers over the regulated market. South Africa is not a self-contained market like China, India, Brazil, and US. The market due to its size is characterized by high degree of concentration, especially in capital intensive, high volume, low margin business to ensure economic of scale and maintain world-class standard. However, this market concentration comes at a high price for South Africa, as it was built on the back of apartheid colonial economics that historically ensured poverty, inequality, unemployment, and historical economic exclusion. Since the emergency in 1994, the ANC set into a motion of program transformation to correct the historical injustice of the past. Critical for this debate is to understand that the markets were deregulated in many industries during the democratic transition. Deregulation of critical markets are driven the cost of living upwards and increased cost of household. Small markets are not self-correcting and therefore require regulation. While we agree that there is a need to measure to alleviate the financial strain on the families and household to deal with the cost of living, it is important that we develop measures that are well thought out and which do not have unintended consequences, especially for efficient governance. An attempt to hollow out government undermines economic development for the majority. Therefore, in such market, there is necessity for the regulation to ensure competition and reduce monopolistic market behavior. This work has been tasked and is carried out through the Competition Commission. The policy trajectory of the ANC was to deal with the market concentration, price collusion, and predatory pricing, achieve inclusive economic development, deconcentration of the market, which ensures space for empowerment and job creation. These are real solutions to high cost of living, as they cannot be clawed back by the private sector through reducing VAT or taxes. Government must deal with the rocket and feather effect, where prices are quick to rise like a rocket but slow to fall even when conditions changes. We need to develop enforceable legislation and regulation for these sectors which impact on the cost of living. In this regard, it is important to review the role of import parity pricing in the domestic market, as we have little control over rand-dollar exchange rate. The import parity price system is legacy of apartheid era and prices domestically produced goods as if they were imported with freight cost. A key example of this, Chair, was when the conflict between Russia and its neighbor Ukraine occurred. The price of wheat, sunflower went up. South Africa import wheat from Russia and Ukraine and sunflower for cooking oil. 70% of the cooking oil supplied into the domestic market is locally produced and 30% is imported. But yet the domestic price increased as if all cooking oil, which is basic commodity, is imported. The same thing happened with South Africa steel, which is exported to Spain, Portugal, Thailand to produce LPG cylinders. These countries are able to do so cheaper than it being locally manufactured. This occurs again due to the import parity pricing of the steel as locally produced. Steel is priced in the domestic market as if it is imported with the freight cost and export at the cheaper export parity price. This negative affects the local industrialization. The price of petroleum products in the country impact on the cost of the living. And the government must make an intervention through waiving the fuel level, and that South Africa is a petroleum price taker and not price setter. And the local petroleum pricing regime is determined on the dollar-dominated imports, which are sold in rand. However, petroleum pricing is also based on import parity system. Domestically produced product must be priced on a cost-plus system as import parity inflate margins. This is the rationale for the ANC supporting the state president call during the opening of the parliament for the new review of regulating price, including the petroleum pricing. We support this review as it will guide our measures to grant relief based on facts, evidence, rather than populist rhetoric of fiction. The cost of commuter rail transport has been cheap and stable, but the restoration of commuter rail is ensuring that the working class and the poor have rapid, efficient, cheap transport system. That is the reason that since the recovery of the corridor and modernization of the commuter rail, passengers number have climbed from a lower of 5 million passengers to 39 million passengers per annum. This tells the story on the commuter rail. It is cheaper and quicker than road transport. Yes, this have some fiscals. Guess what? It is well. Our people deserve better for all. The development of BR system will ensure cheap and efficient transport as it is rolled out. However, we are waiting for the release of the transport subsidies policy as it is going to change the nature of road public transport in favor of the user rather than ending up in the bottom line of the established bus companies. The National Coordinating Committee is dealing with the improvement in rail freight. The private sector will also operate certain corridors, also driving efficient in the sector. The Transnet freight rail operation will improve and the cost of freight logistics will improve as government commence implementing the movement of goods from road to rail. But this rail infrastructure must be ready to implement that policy. In terms of electricity tariff, the problem is not with Eskom. Government will need to find effective ways to deal with the municipal effective sales without affecting the revenue of the local government. Perhaps the Minister of Energy should start in Cape Town, which has the highest electricity tariff in the country, as the city works at high cost and is unable to control its cost. We must not develop or suggest measures that take care of one side of the coin, but leave the other side of the coin unattended to bite us. The role of the government is to ensure regulation of markets which are worsening the cost of living, like the financial sector, which is creating high household debt. Therefore, in South Africa, the invisible hand of market, as Adam Smith predicts, is either broken or weak or not working. And therefore, government intervention is required to correct market failures. The government of national unity must ensure that the national economic interests prevail in relation to ensuring that commodity, whether food or any product that the matters, remains the end consumer at the cheapest possible price. Local industrialization and job creation program to mitigate the effect of high cost of living is the solution. Handouts do not solve the problem of the high cost of living, but leading to the economic transformation. ANC has been attempting to do that through its program, well as supporting the biggest budget. Thank you so much, Chairperson.
Thank you. Honorable Kana. Honorable Kana.
Mutshami wa xitulu na khensa ni khensa ku nyikiwa nkarhi ni rhandza ku khensa na Mhlonipheki Mabhena ka moxi lowu. To live in South Africa, it's expensive, Chairperson. Even when you die, it's very expensive. Every day in different ways, we all feel the weight of ballooning expenses, whether in commuting, in healthcare, groceries, or school fees. So what are the drivers of the high cost of living? There are internal factors that are within the control of government and the state. For example, dealing with crime and dealing with those that are stealing public funds. Because this makes the cost of doing business more expensive. These costs are then transferred to the consumers, rich or poor. South Africans are not getting value for money from their taxes, meaning that there's less money to go around to save and invest. Because of the high levels of crime and the state's inability to effect its constitutional responsibility of keeping South Africans safe, one of the fastest growing industries in our country is private security. Consumers are paying for security at shopping centers and residential places. Due to the high crime rate, many South Africans have to pay exorbitant fees for armed response and personal insurance, money they do not have. The failure to deliver quality public services in education, healthcare, and transport is another driver of the cost of living. South Africans are forced to pay for private schooling, private healthcare, transport, and so forth. Government is making it expensive to live due to corruption and incapacity, with South Africans being forced to pay heavily for this. There might very well be those that will be against inflation targeting. But inflation on its own affects the poor and the middle class the most. If we do not keep inflation in check and give the Reserve Bank the space to do its job, we will be in a far worse position. So what's to be done, Mutshami wa xitulu? One, we need to look at the basket of VAT-exempt goods and services. We need to ensure that there's affordable and reliable energy and water. We need to get the passenger rail services to be fully operational and extend its reach, and the public bus services to go to many areas, including rural areas. We need to ensure that the criminal justice system works and is able to prosecute and process cases of corruption of people that are stealing from the state, and ensure that the proceeds of crime are paid back to the state. We need to halve the murder rate in South Africa so that South Africans can walk the streets more safely. We need to properly investigate those who collude in the prices of goods and services, especially food. What must follow are strong sanctions. Thank you very much. You can just snap.
Thank you, Honorable Kana. NCC? NCC? No one. PAC? PAC? No one. UAT? UAT? There's no one. Good? Good? No one. We'll move to Honorable Kupega.
Thank you,
Honorable Kupega?
Honorable Chair.
Yes, I can hear you now.
Honorable Chairperson, members of Parliament, and the people of South Africa. Today I rise on behalf of Umkhonto we Sizwe Party to address a matter of national importance: the escalating financial strain on South Africans due to the crippling cost of living crisis. I would like to echo Honorable Gasa's sentiments on the issue. The rising prices of basic food, services, and utilities are pushing our people to the brink, and it is high time that this government takes serious measures to alleviate the burden on the working class and the poor. Honorable members, the cost of living crisis is not merely an economic issue, it's a political one, rooted in the systemic failures of the ruling government. Umkhonto we Sizwe Party believes that the policies implemented by this administration have led to the deterioration of the economic conditions that once promised hope for millions of South Africans. Under the leadership of President Zuma, Umkhonto weSizwe Party remains committed to ensuring that the basic needs of the people are met and that we address the inequality that has deepened over the years. Let us be clear, honorable members, that the working class, the poor, and the marginalized bear the brunt of this crisis. The increase in fuel prices, the outrageous cost of electricity, the skyrocketing food prices have created unbearable living conditions for our people. How can we expect South Africans to survive when their salaries remain stagnant, yet the cost of living rises exponentially year on year? It is time to stop the empty promises, honorable members, and take decisive action. Umkhonto weSizwe Party proposes the following measures to alleviate this crisis. Number one, implementing a price freeze on essential goods. Basic food items, fuel, electricity should be protected from constant price increases. The government must intervene in the market to ensure that the cost of bread, maize, fuel, and other essentials are controlled so that the ordinary South Africans can afford to live with dignity. Number two, reducing the taxes on the working class and poor. Umkhonto weSizwe Party calls for the immediate relief through the reduction of VAT and other indirect taxes on essential goods. The working class and the poor are being taxed into poverty, while the rich and corporations continue to enjoy tax breaks. It is time to reverse these policies and give the people a fair chance and a fair share. Number three, expanding social grants. Social security nets must be strengthened to ensure that the vulnerable members of our society, including the elderly, the children, and the unemployed youth, are protected from the harsh economic conditions. MK Party supports expanding social grants to ensure that no South African is left behind. Number four, addressing the energy crisis. Load shedding and the constant increase in electricity tariffs are adding to the financial burden of South Africans. This government's failure to address the Eskom crisis, honorable members, is nothing short of criminal. Umkhonto weSizwe Party calls for the immediate halt to the electricity price hikes and a review of the entire energy policy to ensure affordable and reliable electricity for all. Number five, nationalizing the Reserve Bank. Again, honorable members, I would like to agree with Honorable Tambo on the issues surrounding the South African Reserve Bank. Umkhonto weSizwe Party firmly believes that the financial system is rigged in favor of the wealthy elite, and nationalizing the Reserve Bank would ensure that the interests of ordinary South Africans are prioritized over the profits of corporations and international investors. Honorable Speaker, this crisis did not emerge overnight. It is the result of years of misguided policies, neoliberalism, and the kowtowing to international markets at the expense of our people. It is time for South Africans to chart its own path, one that puts the people first. MK Party believes that real change will only come through a radical shift in economic policy, one that dismantles the power of white monopoly capital and returns control of the economy to the people of South Africa. President Zuma has always stood with the people. Under his leadership, MK Party will continue to fight for economic freedom. The cost of living crisis is evidence that the government's failure, but also represents an opportunity for us to stand together, united in our pursuit of a better life. MK Party is ready to lead the charge in addressing this crisis. We are not here to make empty promises, honorable members, but to take real concrete steps to alleviate the suffering of our people. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Hassan.
Thank you very much, House Chair. Today's debate is perhaps one of the most important since taking office as public reps, fundamentally because this is an issue that affects every single South African to varying degrees. And it's not merely about statistics or abstract concepts. It is a reality that touches the daily lives of our people, influencing their ability to provide for their families, plan for the future, and maintain their dignity. As the ANC, from our very inception, we have centered the plight of our people and have fought against white supremacist and colonial systems. We continue to champion economic transformation, something that we will never back down from, Honorable van Staden, inclusive economic growth and job creation, to ensure that the challenges of poverty, inequality, and unemployment can be defeated. And that is why we, as the ANC, are fixated with alleviating the pressures of the rising cost of living since the COVID-19 pandemic. We are the only ones who have developed measures to alleviate the financial strain on households, and these measures have been and must be targeted for the poor who bear the brunt of the rising cost of living. As the ANC-led government, we have developed a comprehensive and wide-ranging social wage, from grants to free basic education, from school nutrition programs to interventions on public transport covered by previous speakers, from utility subsidies to interventions on high food costs, and a progressive minimum wage. Members of this House up to now have not painted an accurate picture of the measures that the ANC-led government has put in place to cushion the knock on households for every concern and issue raised here by members. Chairperson, some in this debate have sought to undermine the impact of social grants in this country, and in doing so forget that these grants are often the only thing standing between a person and homelessness, severe hunger, and in some cases even death. Our country under the ANC-led government has a pro-poor and working class agenda where 60% of the budget is geared towards increasing the social wage for the benefit of our people. And that includes the following grants: child support, foster child, disabilities, care dependency, elderly grants, and pensions for senior citizens. During COVID-19, we introduced the SRD grant to support the poor and indigent, which is already paving a way for the universal basic income grant that the ANC conceptualized before Action SA was even an idea. Government also provides free basic scholar transport and meals at schools. Often this is the only meal that children have access to. And the rationale for this was quite simple. ANC members are one with the community and understood the necessity to deal with the challenges of poverty and the rising cost of living. Scholars also receive free basic education, and financial support is granted for higher education by NSFAS. Honorable Ghana, it is a choice to use private institutions for higher learning and for basic education as well. Same goes for healthcare. Very importantly, House Chair, there are no empty promises here, as MKP has alluded to. To show our seriousness as the ANC to deal with the problem, we have currently spent over 266 billion rand in this financial year alone on social grants. And this is a significant increase from years past. To drive home the point, allow me to take you through this breakdown. 92 billion for the old age grant, helping 3.8 million Gogos and Mkhulus who live and survive off this grant. 77 billion on child support grants, that's 13 million parents who are looking after kids. 24 billion on the disability grant, over 1 million people benefit from this. And these are not just numbers, these are people who right now benefit from our interventions to alleviate poverty. Very importantly, a core financial strain for most families is the high interest rates on bonds and car finances, which according to economist Davi Rudd consumes more than 40% of household income. The financial sector is a major culprit in this regard. And in January this year, Westbank was exposed for charging higher interest rates for blacks than for whites. The financial sector currently sits on 23 trillion rand in a largely untransformed industry, and it must be productively invested to ensure development of local industrialization and SMMEs. Honorable Tambo and Honorable Ghana spoke to the role of the South African Reserve Bank. The Monetary Policy Committee has implemented 11 interest rate hikes since 2021. And according to Chief Economist Johan Els at the Old Mutual Group, a timely reduction in rates will provide much needed relief and stimulate economic growth. The MPC has an opportunity to alleviate this cost of living by cutting interest rates. And this would mean lower borrowing costs, stimulating spending, and providing a boost to the local economy. Housing rentals, especially in the middle and working class areas, are high and a device of a deregulated market. The very same city of Cape Town is the worst in the country in creating affordable and equitable housing. It also offers citizens in differential services, Kaili Chenguguletu, neglected, forgotten, and like a Sea Point and a Constantia. House Chair, we must, of course, deal with the cost of food and what the Competition Commission is doing about it. The Competition Commission is dealing with market concentration and monopolistic behavior, as well as predatory and collusive pricing in the market. The Commission has been monitoring essential food prices and is dealing with above inflationary price increases. This was illustrated in the well-known case of the bread price collusion scandal, where the Commission flashed its teeth and levied huge fines on these companies. Even now, the Commission has initiated a fresh produce market inquiry to prevent monopolistic and anti-competitive behavior. The provisional report focuses on the barriers to entry in the value chain, obstacles facing black and small-scale farmers, expansion issues, and the dominance of the big five supermarket conglomerates. And furthermore, the Commission is suggesting that the food price inflation is currently at its lowest. However, increases are related to higher producer and retailer margins. The Department of Trade and Industry and Competition needs to assess the increase in producer and retailer food margins so that an informed decision on evidence rather than the soapbox politics that has been presented today can be made. The ANC has been the first to call for and implement items that are zero rated for VAT on basic food products. And there's been a call for increasing that basket. However, even these food products that have been zero rated have seen price increases since the end of the COVID-19 pandemic. And this is showing us that merely zero rating more products will only provide temporary relief, as producers and retailers will continue increasing the price to absorb that into their profitability. And this is the point that the DA and the Action SA have not taken into account. We need real and long-lasting solutions for the cost of living, which requires regulatory, legislative, and even financial intervention like the SRD grants, which assist people in real terms. The ANC has also introduced and has been implementing the indigent policy, which remains an essential tool to guard the poorest of our country against the effective cost of living. While this policy has been a success, we must employ municipalities across the country to improve its efficiency and implementation. Vulnerable communities rely on it. South Africa, as we know, has been built on cheap black labor and the exploitation of mining and agricultural workers. We have always, as an ANC government and an ANC party, advocated for a progressive minimum wage and living wage to ensure that people are not forced into poverty. House Chair, we must caution the very same DA who has had a lot to say today, because it's incredibly ironic given that the same DA has not only opposed minimum wage, but wants to further hammer the working class by advocating for an opt-out of the minimum wage. And I'm not making this up. I'm going to pull directly from the 2019 DA manifesto. A labor market flexibility exemption clause, allowing potential employers and employees to opt out of the relevant sectoral minimum wage. It is shocking that the DA, after advocating against a critically important safety net for millions of South Africans, to now come and paint a picture that the ANC has done nothing to protect the poor, when they are the same party that has actively colluded against the poor and the working class. House Chair, on electricity, we know a huge contribution factor, myriad of challenges that are facing them. We need to upgrade aging infrastructure, combat non-payment and illegal connections, lack of consistency in how municipalities determine tariffs. But there is a much larger issue here, and that is the fact that the most expensive electricity in this country actually has been set by a municipality where we are all in right now, the city of Cape Town. And this is showing us that it's not just a consumer problem, it's not an Eskom problem. This, in fact, is a profitability issue by our municipalities. And we also call on the minister to increase the free basic electricity subsidy beyond the 50 kilowatts an hour. We know that the Department of Mineral Resources has, over a period of time, installed solar water geysers for the poor and working class. We have seen the electricity and Eskom crisis that is being created by the party leader of MKP. And it's laughable that the assertions that have been made that they are the ones to fix the problem. Let me finish with water. House Chair, the reality is that we're dealing with major problems in the water industry. And I'm not even going to talk to the higher cost of water in this particular province, but I am going to talk to the ANC prioritizing issue of water and having established the task team. In fact, yesterday, the Deputy President spoke to it in the House, a multi-pronged approach that brings together the state, private sector, and other industry experts to upgrade bulk services, utilize innovative methods, and best practice from around the world to increase water reticulation and access thereto. Fuel prices have been covered by the Honorable Malimacha. Let me conclude with this, House Chair. We hear South Africans. We know that you are struggling. We know that the rising cost of living makes it incredibly difficult to get through the month, the week, or even the day with what you are currently earning. Rest assured that we as the ANC will never abandon you. At every point in the value chain, we are putting in interventions to help reduce the cost of living. It is not a long-term, it's not a short-term solution, it is a long-term fight. But we will continue to stand by our people, and we will continue to put in every measure to bring down the cost of living as a caring government of the African National Congress. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. We'll now go to Honorable Mabhena, but I will remind the honorable members that Honorable Alexandra saved 5 minutes, and it has been added to the 3 minutes of Honorable Mabhena. You have now 8 minutes to close off the debate. Over to you, Honorable Mabhena.
No, thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. I must say and agree and say thank you to all honorable members. I think it was a robust and enriching debate. And furthermore, that even though we have diverse perspectives and ideas from various backgrounds, we can all agree that today we almost have a common understanding that more must be done to address the needs of the poor and vulnerable. And that, Honorable Chairperson, is what will set us apart from previous parliaments. But also that this consensus underscores the very important and critical nature of us being in a position to collaborate and have some sort of shared responsibility in tackling the challenges of poverty and inequality. I think this is quite important. But even though maybe some honorable members might have missed this mark by a mile, Honorable Mhlawuli unfortunately came with a prepared speech and completely missed the mark. He seems to believe that we came to this platform to debate and to point fingers at the ANC and blame the ANC. Well, we're over that. That chapter is closed. We are a part of government now. What he missed is that in my speech, we acknowledge the incredible interventions of the GNU, which have been reinforced by Honorable Hassan here, who has just spoken. But we also spoke about the resilience of the currency. I mean, the rand, as we speak now, has hit a 3-year record. And yes, the rand, like other risk-sensitive currencies, the rand often takes cues from US monetary policy and other global drivers in addition to domestic factors. But the 3-year record of rand stability can only be attributed to the government of national unity. And in as far as the issue of we also mentioned—
On a point of order.
Honorable Mabhena, there's a point of order. Honorable Tambo.
Yeah, it's factually incorrect and misleading to the people of South Africa to say the current rand strength or 3-year rand haul of strength in South Africa is due to the government of national unity. The government of national unity was not established 3 years ago.
Honorable Tambo, that's
member
not a
withdraw?
point of order. That's a point of
He's
debate.
lying. He's lying. It's a blatant lie. Okay, let's take prop dates.
Not a point of
The government of national unity was
That's
established 3 months ago. How do you say the
Honorable
rand is
Tambo,
strong because of the GNU?
Honorable Tambo.
It's a factual, it's a lie. He's
Honorable
lying
Tambo.
to Parliament.
ACT,
House
please
Chairperson, so
remove
you're
Honorable
condoning
Tambo.
lies. You're
ICT,
condoning lies,
please
Chairperson.
remove Honorable Tambo.
It is a lie to say the
But why is
GNU
it
has
being removed?
strengthened their—
Why is it being removed?
Honorable Mabhena, please continue.
Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Why did you remove Honorable Tambo? Why is he
Honorable
removed from the
Dlamini,
platform?
I have not recognized you, and I have not given you a platform to speak.
Chair, you've been
Why are
biased
you
since you
speaking?
took the seat.
Why
And now you
are you
expect us to be
speaking?
quiet. You
Honorable
have been
Dlamini, why are you
biased.
speaking? I'm cautioning you. Why are you speaking?
I'm cautioning
Did
you
I
against your
recognize you?
biases towards
Did I
the EFF.
recognize you?
You
Did
are
I
being biased
recognize you?
towards the EFF. You lose patience
ICT,
with
please
the
remove
EFF.
Honorable Dlamini.
Mara.
Honorable Mabhena, please continue.
But Chair, why are you not presiding on the House correctly? Why are you doing this?
I will wait until all of them are removed one by one.
Yeah, Chairperson.
Honorable Mkhaliphi, I have not recognized you. Did you say you raised a point
But
of
we must recognize us.
No.
Why are you behaving like a
Did you
school
say,
principal now?
Chair, on a
Why are
point
you
of
behaving
order?
like a school
I
principal
have
now?
not
We are members
recognized you.
there.
Why are you speaking?
We are asking
No,
questions
why
to
are you
you. But why
speaking
are you
when
behaving
I
like
have
this?
not recognized you? Honorable Mkhaliphi, I'm cautioning you again.
Why do you
Why
recognize
are
me,
you
Pela?
speaking when you have not raised a point of order? You just unmuted and spoke.
Yeah, point of
You
order.
did not even raise a point
A
of
point
order.
of order. Don't behave like a school principal, please.
No, don't shout at me. I am asking
Point
you
of
nicely
order.
that you must raise a point of order.
Honorable Chair.
I was asking you nicely. You have not risen a point of order, and you just unmuted and spoke when I have not even.
But I'm saying point of order.
Yeah, I
What
think
is your
that
point of
first
order,
let
Honorable Mkhaliphi?
Mphatlele sivile siyabuyisa collective.
Honorable Stolle, please mute your mic. Honorable Mkhalip.
Yeah, Chairperson.
What is your point of order?
Giti, why are you removing just members like that? Why are you not following the rules?
I am following the rules. They both unmuted without being recognized by the chairperson to speak. When I cautioned Honorable Tambo not to continue speaking because I have not recognized him as a point of order, I even told him that that is not a point of order, but it's a point of debate. And he continued, and I cautioned him again, and then he continued. That's when I said ICT must remove him.
No, but the chair.
And Honorable Dlamini unmuted and also did the same thing. And I said it, that I have not recognized Honorable Dlamini to speak. And she continued speaking. And I said, Honorable Dlamini, I have not recognized you to speak. So as much as they are not following the rules of the mini-plenary, I am following the rules. That is why I asked ICT to remove them.
No, but Chair, we are not even following the rules. At your background,
no,
there's a nose of your kids
what
there.
point are you raising on, Honorable Mkhalip? What point
of order. I'm still on the point of order.
On what
your
rule?
kids
On
are
what
also
rule?
disturbing us. Your kids,
On what
there, the
rule
background.
are you raising on?
We are bringing your kids in parliament. You are not even telling us that we must also respect your kids there in parliament. But,
please unmute, mute Honorable
but I'm still
Mkhalip.
understand.
Mute Honorable Mkhalip. ICT, mute Honorable Mkhalip. Honorable Mabhena, please continue.
Thank you very much.
So we must listen to your kids. You take your kids to parliament. So that's what we are subject.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson.
We are here in parliament with your kids. That's what is the GNU bring.
ICT, please remove Honorable Mkhalip.
You bring in your kids, the GNU,
remove
and then
Honorable Mkhalip.
Thank you very
Honorable
much.
Mabhena, please continue.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Maybe just to repeat, maybe the message did not land correctly. We are saying that the resilience of our currency as the rand has hit a 3-year record. And yes, the rand, like any other risk-sensitive currencies, the rand often takes cues from US monetary policy and other global drivers in addition to domestic factors. But a 3-year record of rand stability can only be attributed to the GNU. And also, we've also mentioned here that the fuel price intervention plan as announced by the president, and also as noted by Honorable Malimaja, but obviously missed by Honorable Mhlaule, and also again noted by Honorable Hassan. You would think that these 3 honorable members come from 3 different parties, but they come from one organization. Others are able to see the work of the GNU, others are fixated in terms of denouncing that work. Again, Honorable House Chairperson, you know, another thing is that the promotion of national government's fiscal policy and fiscal discipline and just general alignment and coordination of macroeconomic policy remains important because this has a ripple effect in ensuring the stability and soundness of the financial system and overall financial services in our country. But also goes a long way in making sure that our finances are credible in international markets and thereby ensuring that the country is attractive to international investors and attracting foreign direct investments, which will go a long way in what we're debating today in dealing with the high cost of living crisis. Because if we attract foreign direct investment, we can be in a position to intervene in what we're seeing today. But also, as we seek these new interventions, we must not be irresponsible and doing away with fiscal discipline and with what we have in the country. We are also encouraged that the Government of National Unity is focused on this goal. And also maybe just one other thing that maybe perhaps we have to share here. The City of Cape Town has one of the largest indigent database, and those that cannot afford basic amenities such as water, electricity, they receive rebates. The City of Cape Town is one of the only big metros in South Africa that does this at the scale that it does. No other metro comes close to City of Cape Town. These are not numbers that are thumbsuck, but you can find these numbers in terms of the reports that are there. And these are not reports which are generated by DA-aligned institutions, but these are independent institutions, and more so other institutions coming from government, from national government, which confirms what we are saying here. Honorable House Chairperson, in closing, I would again like to say that despite our different persuasions, there is unanimity and unanimous agreement that urgent and comprehensive efforts are necessary to uplift and support the most vulnerable in our country. And we're encouraged by the efforts of the Government of National Unity, as is evidenced by a whole lot of interventions which is currently happening. But we also agree that we need to relook at the electricity tariff hike, the one that is proposed, as Honorable Malemacha has also confirmed here. We agree with that, and that has been a campaign of the DA for the longest time. And also, again, the campaign of the DA for the longest time has been the review of the fuel price model in this country. So these policies are now finally making their way into government and are becoming government policy. We can only be beneficiaries, but also South Africans will be beneficiaries of this DA policy finding its way into government. Thank you very much. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mabhena. That was the last speaker of the debate, and that concludes the debate and the business of this virtual mini plenary session.